Chapter 2647 Dharma Ending Era. 2647 Dharma Ending Era. For the next few days the martial Tao Prime Body stayed in the palace and did not leave. As the birthday banquet of the North Ridge approached, Hell King experts would descend upon North Ridge City from time to time. In the few days, the martial Tao Prime Body tried to communicate with the Green Lotus True Body, but there was no reaction. As Tang Qinger had said, the Hell World was ranked alongside the medium Kiliacosm. There must be some sort of a powerful barrier between the two. The barrier could even isolate the connection between Su Zimo's two true bodies. For the past few days Tang Qinger had been showing the martial Tao Prime Body all the ancient books in the palace of the North Ridge that were related to Hell. Through their interactions, the martial Tao Prime Body had a rough understanding of Frost Springs Hell and even the entire Hell. The reason why this place was called Frost Springs Hell was because there was indeed a gigantic spring in the center of this hell that surged with an extremely cold water and was known as the Frost Springs. There were similar reasons for the names of the other 8 hells. For example, in the center of Yellow Springs Hell, there was a turbid and withered spring water known as the Yellow Springs. In the center of the Een Springs Hell, there was extreme Een water, giving it the name the Een Springs. The entire Hell world had some similarities with the medium Kiliacosm where Su Zimo ascended. For example, the Hell world also contained a large amount of heaven and earth essence chi. Perhaps because of the environment, there was an additional dark and cold power in the heaven and earth essence chi. The living beings of the Hell world called it the Nether chi. The reason why the heaven and earth essence chi in the heavenly world was rich and massive was because of the existence of the builder tree. The spring water of the 9 hells had a similar effect. It could be said that the 9 springs were the source of power for the 9 hells. What was even stranger was that according to the ancient books in the palace of the North Ridge, not only did the 9 springs contain completely different powers, they also possessed unimaginable might. For example, the Frost Springs water here was water of extreme coldness and could cause immense damage to any living being, especially the aquatic ones. As for the Yellow Springs water, it was turbid and withered, possessing the use of washing away one's memories. It was said that after the soul was baptized in the Yellow Springs water, it would forget its memories of its previous life. The soup of oblivion? The love erasure potion? At that point, an indescribable feeling rose in the heart of the martial Tao Prime Body. In the Hell world, there seemed to be actual comparisons to some of the legends and myths that he had heard in the mortal world. For example, the Boundless Springs water could cleanse curses. Any curse or filth would dissipate after being washed by the Boundless Springs water. The martial Tao Prime Body had even seen records of the ancient Nether race in the ancient books. The ancient Nether race was not a race that was born, but a race that was created through transformation. There were all sorts of strange things in the Trikiliacosm. This was also the first time that the martial Tao Prime Body had seen a strange method like creating life through transformation. According to the ancient books, apart from the reproduction and nurturing of the living beings of the 10,000 races, there was another unique method for the living beings of the Hell world to create life, transformation. Every once in a while living beings would be born from the 9 springs. Those living beings had no parents. The method of creating something out of nothing was the transformation of life in the Hell world. Bloodshed and countless living beings died everywhere in the Hell world. However, due to the strange method of life evolution such as transformation, there was still an endless stream of living beings in the Hell world. Life can be born from the 9 springs of Hell. When the martial Tao Prime Body first saw those records he was extremely surprised. Although the builder tree also had the effect of gathering heaven and earth essence chi, it could not nurture any special life form. Even the martial Tao Prime Body had never seen such records in the upper world. This method of life creation seemed to be breaching the deepest secret dharmic daos of the world. Even the great emperors who were so powerful could not create life. The living beings that were born from the 9 springs of Hell were the ancient Nether race of the Hell world. There could be humans, demon beasts and all sorts of living beings in the ancient Nether race. However, after those living beings were created from the 9 springs of Hell, they belonged to the ancient Nether race. The mark of the ancient Nether race was extremely obvious as well. Typically, there would be a strange rune on the surface or glabellas of those living beings. It was the same rune that the martial Tao Prime Body had seen on the glabella of Nether General North Black. The meaning of that rune was Nether. At this point, the martial Tao Prime Body could not help but recall the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra nurtured by the Green Lotus True Body. Those strange runes were extremely similar to the Yin Yang Talisman Sutra and should originate from the same civilization. Could the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra be related to the Hell world? Or were they both from the same civilization? The ancient Nether race had a supreme status in the Hell world. It was not only because the ancient Nether race was born from the 9 springs of Hell. More than that, it was because after they were born, they possessed powers that were far stronger than other living beings. Be it in terms of bloodline or physique, they were incomparably strong and suppressed everyone of the same cultivation realm. The bloodline of the ancient Nether race was so strong that after growing to a certain age, a bloodline phenomenon closely related to the 9 springs of Hell they came from would be born. That was not hard to imagine. The 9 springs of Hell were said to be the foundation of the 9 hells, and the living beings born from their spring water were definitely extraordinary. Unfortunately for the arrogant Nether General North Black, he encountered the martial Dao Prime body and was killed by a single sword chi before he could even release his bloodline phenomenon. The ancient Nether race could reproduce as well. However, their descendants would almost never inherit the bloodline power of the ancient Nether race, and they did not have the strange runes of the Nether word on their bodies. Only those from the ancient Nether race were qualified to be called Nether Generals and Nether Kings. For example, the Hell Lords of the 9 Hells were all from the ancient Nether race. Back then, the Lord of Hell was the strongest person in the ancient Nether race. According to the ancient books, under normal circumstances, the 9 Hell Lords were all Emperor Realm experts. As for the Lord of Hell, he reigned over the 9 Hells. However, an era ago the Hell world seemed to have suffered a serious injury, causing the world to shatter. Its great Tao was damaged and its laws were incomplete. In that calamity, not only did the Lord of Hell die, the entire Hell world suffered immense losses as well, and countless emperors, Hell kings and other experts died. What was even more serious was that the Hell world had not been repaired. As time passed, the Nether chi in the Hell world thinned, and even the 9 springs of Hell showed signs of drying up. Thereafter, the Hell world fell into the Dharma ending era and fewer living beings advanced to the Emperor realm. After a long time, the emperors of the past died with the end of their lifespans. From then on, there were no longer any living beings in the 9 hells that became emperors. Up till now, although the ancient Nether race was still holding down the positions of the 9 hell lords, almost all of them were peak hell kings and there were no emperor realm experts. Of course, although there were no emperor realm experts in the Dharma ending era of the Hell world, they had accumulated a large number of Hell kings and Nether kings, and their foundations were still present. Chapter 2648 2648 Gifts of the Ridges. 2648 Gifts of the Ridges. For the past few days, the martial Tao Prime body had been digesting many pieces of information about the Hell world. Although he had a rough understanding of Hell, he still had many questions in his mind. The ancient books recorded that the Hell world was severely injured during the Infinite Era. Was it done by Great Emperor Infinite? Could the power controlled by a Great Emperor severely injure the entire Hell world such that the Great Tao was shattered and the world was incomplete? The martial Tao Prime body was skeptical about that. However, if not for Great Emperor Infinite, why would such a catastrophe happen? Apart from being sinister and terrifying, there were too many unknowns in the Hell world that seemed mysterious. The ancient books in the North Ridge Palace could not give the martial Tao Prime body an answer to those unknowns. Perhaps only the Hell King experts here knew a thing or two. The martial Tao Prime body had flipped through the ancient books sent by Tang Qinger, but he could not find a way to leave the Hell world and return to the medium Kiliacosm. Since the Hell world coexisted with the medium Kiliacosm, the Dharmic Tao inheritance here would definitely be different from the medium Kiliacosm. The martial Tao Prime body intended to search for high-quality Dharmic Tao inheritances in Hell and continue to divine and perfect the martial Tao while looking for a way to leave. 5 days later, the birthday banquet of King North Ridge officially began. By the time Tang Qinger arrived at the main hall with the martial Tao Prime body, there were already many people seated. Some maidservants in veils carried various spirit fruits from Hell and came and went with their beautiful bodies vaguely visible. Although Tang Qinger was a junior, she was a princess of the North Ridge after all. Her seat was relatively closer to the front and was on the side of King North Ridge's seat. There were 5 seats on each side for the royal family of the North Ridge. Together, 10 spacious areas were created for the 10 great Hell Ridges. Why are you still here? When the young master of the South Forest saw the martial Tao Prime body from his seat, his expression darkened as he asked with a frown. As though he had not heard anything, the martial Tao Prime body did not even look at him. Right now, it was the birthday banquet of King North Ridge, and it was inappropriate for the young master of the South Forest to get angry and make a fuss as well. The young master of the South Forest rolled his eyes and suddenly said, "Desolate Marshal, today is the birthday banquet of King North Ridge. Everyone who attends the banquet will bring congratulatory gifts. What have you brought? Show it to everyone." Over the past few days, Tang Qinger had also learned a lot of information about the heavenly world from the Martial Dao Prime Body and was extremely curious. At that moment, when she saw the Martial Dao Prime Body being troubled, she could not bear it and tugged at the young master of the South Forest, saying in a low voice, "Forget it, fellow Taoist. Desolate Marshal has just arrived in the North Ridge. How would he have the time to prepare any congratulatory gifts? Let's not make things difficult for him. How can you sit here so comfortably without a congratulatory gift?" The young master of the South Forest sneered. The Martial Dao Prime Body looked at the surging crowd outside the hall and suddenly said meaningfully, "I've prepared a congratulatory gift, but I hope that King North Ridge won't need it. Heavenly Dragon Ridge has arrived." Right then, a North Ridge guard at the entrance of the hall shouted, "The territorial lord of Heavenly Dragon Ridge has gifted King North Ridge a piece of 100,000-year Hellfrost iron." The Martial Dao Prime Body had once read in an ancient book in the North Ridge Palace that the Hellfrost iron was a specialty treasure of Frost Springs Hell. This frost iron was at the depths of hell and was soaked in the water of the Frost Springs all year round. It was a universal treasure that could only be formed after more than 100,000 years and was a supreme-grade material for forging spirit treasures. Essence-breaking Ridge has arrived. On the other side, the North Ridge Guard declared loudly, "The territorial lord of Essence-breaking Ridge has gifted King North Ridge a piece of spine from an ancient Nether Dragon King." Among the ancient Nether race, there was also a dragon that was born and cultivated to the level of a Nether King. However, he died later on and that created the spine of the Dragon King. The spine of a Dragon King was precious enough, let alone that of an ancient Nether Dragon King. Good, good, good. King North Ridge sat in the middle of the hall majestically and looked down. When he heard the voices coming from the entrance, he nodded repeatedly with a satisfied expression. It was a relatively long process. It was said that there were 100,000 mountain ridges of corpses and bones within the territory of the North Ridge. Although not all the mountain ridges and factions were qualified to extend their congratulations to King North Ridge, this birthday banquet was still filled with noteworthy experts as well. Apart from Hell Generals and Hell Kings, there was no place for Hell Pawns at all in the hall. Before the people of the 10 Great Hell Ridges arrived, there were already more than 1,000 Hell Kings from the other Hell Ridges and their numbers were still increasing. Even in the heavenly world, the Martial Dao Prime Body had never seen such a massive lineup. The 9 Firmament meet back then was already a massive event. The 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Pure Land of Bliss only sent out slightly more than 100 Immortal King experts in total. Of course, the North Ridge was different from the heavenly world. There were at least dozens of Emperor experts in the heavenly world. However, there were no Emperor experts in the North Ridge or even the entire Frost Springs Hell. Ha 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 ha. The entire birthday banquet was bustling with people and King North Ridge was delighted as well. From time to time he would laugh loudly and drink strong wine. These Hell Ridges were merely the appetizers. The true feast would have to wait till the 10 Great Hell Ridges were gathered. Right then, the guard at the entrance of the hall declared, "The South Forest has sent envoys to congratulate King North Ridge on his 800,000th birthday. Even though we're so far apart, the South Forest sent people. You don't know yet, right? I heard that the little princess of the North Ridge and the young master of the South Forest are about to get engaged and become Dao companions. The marriage will make the two factions even closer. If these two factions join forces, it seems like King North Ridge can continue to rule over the North Ridge for at least another 100,000 years." Among the envoys sent by the South Forest, the leader was Hell King South Essence who came with many generous gifts. There were more than 100 congratulatory gifts alone. This scene caused a commotion in the hall and everyone was shocked. The South Forest side had given enough face to King North Ridge. King North Ridge also knew that the reason why there were so many congratulatory gifts was not only to wish him a happy birthday, they were also part of the betrothal gift. King North Ridge was in a great mood and declared, "King South Forest sure is thoughtful. Why don't we get my daughter and this fine young man to make preparations today and choose a good day for them to get married?" Tang Qinger looked at the young master of the South Forest shyly. She had just felt countless envious gazes looking in her direction and a hint of joy surged in the depths of her heart. "King North Ridge, you sure are wise. My master has the same intentions as well." Hell King South Essence cupped his fists hurriedly. "Ha ha ha ha. King North Ridge burst into laughter and pointed to the seats of the North Ridge royal family. Come sit here. This action was equivalent to giving the young master of the South Forest recognition. The envoys of the South Forest hurried forward and arrived beside the young master. Corpse Mountain Ridge has arrived. Right then the guard at the entrance of the hall shouted once more. Corpse Mountain Ridge, one of the 10 great hell ridges. After shouting that, the North Ridge guard paused and did not continue. Under normal circumstances, the congratulatory gifts from Corpse Mountain Ridge should be announced next. However, the group from Corpse Mountain Ridge did not bring any congratulatory gifts at all. Chapter 2649 Annihilation. 2649 Annihilation. The guard at the entrance of the hall did not dare to stop the territorial lord of Corpse Mountain Ridge when the latter arrived empty-handed. This was a territorial lord from one of the 10 great hell ridges after all. Now that he had brought hundreds of hell kings with him, his group attracted countless gazes the moment they entered the hall. Hundreds of hell king experts meant that almost all of Corpse Mountain Ridge's hell kings were here. Logically speaking, even if they were here to extend congratulations to King North Ridge, there was no need for them to mobilize such a large force and cause such a huge commotion. You brought so many people? King North Ridge raised his brow slightly. The territorial lord of Corpse Mountain Ridge burst into laughter. King North Ridge, I know that you love crowds, so I brought everyone over to take a look and wish you a happy birthday. Oh. King North Ridge asked indifferently, since it's a birthday celebration, what gift did you bring for me? Let me take a look. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly hearty laughter sounded from outside the hall and a voice said, King North Ridge, the 10 great hell ridges have prepared a huge gift for you. You'll definitely be satisfied. Accompanied by that voice, another group of experts entered the hall. The kings of Verdant Flame Ridge, another of the 10 great hell ridges, had arrived. Behind the territorial lord of Verdant Flame Ridge, there were also hundreds of hell king experts. It was clear they were hostile. I'm looking forward to it now that you guys mentioned it. A cold glint flashed through the depths of King North Ridge's eyes. He had lived for 800,000 years and had seen all sorts of storms. Right now, Corpse Mountain Ridge and Verdant Flame Ridge were heading over menacingly. It was clear that they had a motive. King North Ridge immediately sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and made preparations. Tang Hao understood and retreated from the back of the main hall, prepared to gather all the forces in North Ridge City to guard the main hall. King North Ridge presided over the North Ridge for more than 100,000 years. With that foundation, he could mobilize 1,000 Hell King experts in North Ridge City at any moment. Hell King South Essence of the South Forest frowned when he saw that. From the looks of it, chaos was about to break out in the North Ridge. If King North Ridge could survive and calm down the chaos, his prestige and strength would naturally increase exponentially. However, if he failed and was replaced. Hell King South Essence looked at the young master of the South Forest beside him with an inquiring expression. The young master of the South Forest shook his head gently, indicating for them to wait and see. Before long, the remaining few Hell Ridges of the 10 great Hell Ridges arrived one after another. Variant Fiend Ridge, Soulless Ridge, Een Wind Ridge, Dragonbone Ridge, Blood Mist Ridge, Heavenbane Ridge, Darkness Ridge, Frost Ridge, together with Corpse Mountain Ridge and Verdant Flame Ridge that were the first to arrive, the 10 great Hell Ridges were all present. The atmosphere in the main hall of the North Ridge Palace gradually turned from lively and joyful to solemn with a hint of killing intent. With the 10 great Hell Ridges gathered here, there were thousands of Hell King experts. The presence of so many Hell King experts formed an unimaginably massive aura that could even go against the high and mighty King North Ridge. All the factions of the North Ridge present could sense the change in the situation. By the looks of it, the birthday banquet of King North Ridge is probably going to turn into a funeral. Countless living beings die daily in the North Ridge and countless territories change owners. How can King North Ridge preside over the North Ridge for 100,000 years? Back then, King North Ridge suppressed and destroyed countless experts and factions before stabilizing his position. Even if the 10 great Hell Ridges join forces, it won't be easy for them to take down King North Ridge. Many cultivators were already discussing in secret. Father? With a worried expression, Tang Qinger turned to look at King North Ridge, who was not far away. At that moment, King North Ridge sat in the middle of the hall with a stern expression, and the killing intent he exuded intensified. Everyone from the 10 great hell ridges are present. Show me your congratulatory gift now. King North Ridge stood up slowly and a thick malevolent blood chi spread out, as though another ancient ferocious beast had awakened within his body. After all, King North Ridge had presided over the North Ridge for 100,000 years. His hands were stained with endless blood and he stepped on mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The might of a superior was something that even the territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridges could not match. King North Ridge, you've occupied that position for far too long. The territorial lord of Verdant Flame Ridge finally spoke and said coolly. The territorial lord of Corpse Mountain Ridge continued, it's been so long that you're already 800,000 years old and you didn't even realize that you're no longer at your peak. Ha 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 ha. King North Ridge burst into laughter with a menacing expression. Even though I'm 800,000 years old, you guys can't challenge me. Indeed, King North Ridge was confident. Although he was already 800,000 years old, he had once obtained a supreme divine medicine and was able to maintain his peak blood chi without losing much combat strength. Furthermore, he was only a step away from the perfected Grotto-heaven realm. Even if a huge battle broke out and he was eventually defeated, he was confident that he could severely injure the 10 great hell ridges and make the other party pay an unbearable price. North Ridge King. The territorial lord of Variant Fiend Ridge declared loudly, the congratulatory gift we've prepared for you is to wish you a happy birthday with the blood of your entire family. How dare you? King North Ridge was enraged and his killing intent burst forth. He glared at the territorial lord of Variant Fiend Ridge, ready to kill at any moment. He had already instructed Tang Hao to gather the Hell King experts of the North Ridge. However, Tang Hao had not returned even after this period of time. That made him feel uneasy and wary. That was the reason why he did not attack the entire time. Otherwise, given his personality, he would have started a massacre a long time ago. The experts of the other factions of the North Ridge were shocked when they heard the Variant Fiend Ridge territorial lord's words as well. Initially, everyone thought that the territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridges merely joined forces to force King North Ridge to abdicate and were even willing to fight. But now, from the looks of it, the territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridges wanted to annihilate the lineage of King North Ridge. They are trying to annihilate his family. How ruthless. You're way too naive. Given a blood feud this deep, who knows what sort of calamities would be left behind if they're not completely wiped out. The safest method is to exterminate his entire family. The territorial lord of Soulless Ridge said, King North Ridge, your 800,000-year-old celebration today will mark the day of your Tang family's annihilation. At that moment, the 10 great hell ridges no longer hid their intentions. Thousands of Hell Kings were prepared to attack at any moment and start a massacre. When the various factions of the North Ridge saw that, they retreated from the main hall one after another, afraid that they would be implicated and crushed. A great battle that involved Hell Kings would definitely be incomparably tragic. Once the battle broke out and Grotto Heavens collided and devoured one another, countless Hell Kings would be crushed and buried here, let alone Hell Generals. You want to destroy my Tang family? King North Ridge had a sharp expression as he said coldly, my Tang family is about to enter into a marriage alliance with the South Forest. If you dare to challenge my status, you'll be going against King South Forest. Oh. The gazes of the 10 territorial lords landed on the young master of the South Forest with a playful look in their eyes. Instantly, the young master of the South Forest felt a tremendous pressure. Under normal circumstances, he should stand on the side of King North Ridge since he was already engaged to Tang Qinger. However, at that moment he had another question in his mind. Were there other factions involved in the fact that the 10 great hell ridges could join forces to overturn King North Ridge? Or perhaps, was there some expert who appeared in the North Ridge and had absolute confidence of suppressing King North Ridge? Young master of the South Forest, I heard that you have a marriage alliance with the Tang family? Right then, another voice sounded from outside the hall. Chapter 2650 Edict of the Hell Lord. 2650 Edict of the Hell Lord. Someone else had arrived. When they heard that voice, the territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridges relaxed significantly. Against the enraged King North Ridge, the 10 territorial lords felt immense pressure as well. Even if the 10 of them joined forces and could suppress King North Ridge, they would definitely have to pay a heavy price and half of them might even die on the spot. None of the territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridge wanted to die at the front. When that voice sounded in the hall, the thousands of Hell King experts of the 10 Great Hell Ridge consciously avoided it and opened up a path. A group of cultivators entered the hall slowly. Compared to the formation of the 10 Great Hell Ridges, the auras of the new cultivators seemed much weaker. After all, there were only slightly more than 10 of them. However, all the factions of the North Ridge were shocked when they saw the cultivators. All the cultivators had a strange rune on their glabellas. The ancient Nether race. More than 10 Nether Kings arrived at the main hall of the North Ridge Palace. Although Hell Kings and Nether Kings were of the same cultivation realm, the difference in strength between them was extremely great. In terms of physique and bloodline, the ancient Nether race was far superior to ordinary living beings of Hell. When he saw the dozens of Nether Kings, King North Ridge's pupils constricted and his heart skipped a beat. A look of realization flashed through the eyes of the young master of the South Forest. He finally understood why the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges would join forces fearlessly and even declare that they wanted to annihilate the Tang family of the North Ridge. So, the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges were backed by the ancient Nether race. Under normal circumstances, most of the ancient Nether race cultivated in the central capital and would not be too far away from the Frost Springs. It was clear that these ancient Nether race beings were from the central capital as well. The person who presided over the central capital was Hell Lord Frost Springs. Ancient Nether race beings from the central capital were here to join forces with the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges to annihilate the Tang family. Was this the intention of Hell Lord Frost Springs? If that was the case, he could not get involved and had to withdraw in time lest he implicated the South Forest and brought about a calamity for his father. At that thought, the young master of the South Forest stood up hurriedly and bowed to the dozens of Nether Kings. Actually, I was merely interested in a marriage alliance with the North Ridge. However, this matter has yet to be decided. Since such a change happened to the North Ridge, I think we can only put aside the marriage alliance for the time being. As he said that, the young master of the South Forest gave Hell King South Essence a look. The envoys of the South Forest withdrew from their seats one after another and drew a clear line between them and the factions of the North Ridge. You. Tang Qing'er looked at the young master of the South Forest in disbelief, shocked and furious. The young master of the South Forest merely glared at her coldly and did not say anything to her the entire time. The reason why he wanted a marriage alliance with Tang Qing'er was because he was keen on the power of King North Ridge. But now that the Tang family of the North Ridge was about to be annihilated, wouldn't he be courting death if he joined them? Good. King North Ridge was so angry that he laughed instead. He looked at the young master of the South Forest and grinned. Little bastard, you sure have fast reactions. The wise recognize their circumstances. The Nether King in the lead was not old and had an indifferent expression. He smiled and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Ming Feng and I'll become the new King North Ridge. You think that a few of you ancient Nether race beings and the 10 Great Hell Ridges alone can replace me?" King North Ridge was fearless and said slowly with a ferocious glint in his eyes, "If I fight to the death, I won't let you guys have a good time even if I die. I've managed the North Ridge for 100,000 years and have thousands of Hell King experts under my lead. It's not something you guys can shake with ease. I forgot to mention." Ming Feng took out a cloth from his storage bag. "I've also brought an imperial edict from Hell Lord Frost Springs. Anyone who resists will be enemies with him and their family clans, and anyone related by 10 degrees of association will be annihilated without mercy." The moment he said that, the experts under King North Ridge were stunned. These Hell King experts had followed King North Ridge for many years. If they were only facing the 10 Great Hell Ridges, they would not be afraid or retreat under the lead of King North Ridge. However, now that they were up against Hell Lord Frost Springs, many Hell King experts no longer had any intention of resisting. Hell Lord Frost Springs ruled over the entire Frost Springs Hell. Although the Hell world was in the Dharma ending era and the world was shattered with an incomplete Great Tao and Hell Lord Frost Springs was merely a Nether King, no one could challenge his status. Right from the beginning, the martial Tao Prime Body did not say anything and merely enjoyed the wine brewed in Hell, as though everything around him had nothing to do with him. The current situation was gradually becoming clearer. On the side of King North Ridge, after Ming Feng took out the Imperial Edict of Hell Lord Frost Springs, their morale was already low and no one dared to resist. Even if King North Ridge was indignant, he was merely a cornered beast and could not change anything. At that moment, King North Ridge seemed to have aged considerably in an instant as he stood on the ground filled with corpses. Forget it, forget it. King Northridge was silent for a long time before shaking his head. Since it's the will of Hell Lord Frost Springs, I'm willing to accept it. From now on I'll leave the Northridge. No, no, no. Suddenly Ming Feng smiled. You're mistaken about one thing. The Edict of Hell Lord Frost Springs merely gave others a choice. However, the only outcome for the Tang family of the Northridge is extermination. Upon hearing this, Tang Chinger and the others from the royal family looked despaired. King Northridge was enraged as well as he clenched his fists and tried his best to suppress the rage in his heart. Gritting his teeth he said, I'm willing to withdraw, but you guys insist on exterminating us. If my Tang family of the Northridge were to fight you guys to the death, you guys won't have it easy either. Your Tang family of the Northridge. Ming Feng smiled. From this day forth, the Tang family will cease to exist in the Northridge. All right. You're waiting for him, right? As Ming Feng said that, he took out a bloodied head from his storage bag and threw it in front of King Northridge. That head belonged to Tang Hao, who died with grievances. As a Hell King expert, Tang Hao was killed silently in the Northridge Palace. At the sight of Tang Hao's death, King Northridge could no longer suppress the rage in his heart. He also knew that he had no way out. I'll make you pay with your life for my son. King Northridge roared and rose from the skies. He withdrew a gigantic pitch-black saber and slashed down at Ming Feng's head. Splash! King Northridge did not hold back at all and released his powerful blood chi. At the same time he propped up his Grotto-heaven and wanted to kill Ming Feng on the spot. Fu. Ming Feng chuckled with a mocking expression. You overestimate yourself. Behind Ming Feng, another Nether King appeared in a flash. While holding up his Grotto-heaven, he released his bloodline phenomenon. The Grotto-heaven of this Nether King was dark, deep and sinister. There was even a phenomenon accompanying the Grotto-heaven. A gigantic frost springs gushed out like a torrent that emitted a chilling intent and devoured towards King Northridge. It was the innate bloodline phenomenon of the ancient Nether race, Hell Frost Springs. Crack, crack. A layer of frost appeared on King Northridge's Grotto-heaven when it was struck by Hell Frost Springs. Countless ice shards formed both inside and outside the Grotto-heaven. Chapter 2651 What can you do to me? 2651 What can you do to me? Although Hellfrost Springs was only a phenomenon right now, it still emitted a chilling intent that could freeze even the Grotto-heaven of King Northridge. The coldness was still spreading and a layer of frost appeared on the brows and hair of King Northridge. Break! King Northridge roared and his blood chi burst forth. Abandoning his Grotto-heaven, he broke through the frost layer on his body and continued charging towards Ming Feng. Ming Feng sneered with a mocking expression. Right in front of him, King Northridge was like a helpless beast that was struggling and letting out its final sorrowful cry before its death. You overestimate yourself. Ming Feng suddenly attacked and slapped the side of the incoming black saber with lightning speed, neutralizing the power of King Northridge's slash. At the same time, Ming Feng took advantage of the situation and broke through the defense of King Northridge, pressing down on the latter's chest. King Northridge did not have time to retract his saber and could only punch in reverse against Ming Feng's palm. Bang! The fist and palm collided. A chill surged into King Northridge's body through his fist. A layer of frost spread along his arm and towards his body at a visible speed. King Northridge shuddered and was shocked. Both parties merely exchanged a single blow and he was already severely injured. His bloodline and even his organs were showing signs of freezing into ice. King Northridge spat out a mouthful of blood. The mouthful of blood splattered on the ground, emitting a cold aura that had long turned into blood-colored ice shards. In the Hell world, the bloodline of the ancient Nether race was supreme among their peers. The Grotto-heaven of King Northridge was frozen by the bloodline phenomenon of another Nether king and could not be used. He had lost his greatest reliance. Against him, Ming Feng did not even have to release his Grotto-heaven. His physique and bloodline alone were enough to suppress King Northridge. Ming Feng did not give King Northridge a chance to catch his breath. He took a step forward and pushed his palm against the latter's chest. Crack! The chest of King Northridge caved in deeply. When the cold chi entered his body, King Northridge shuddered and could not control his body. He fell to the ground and his lips turned purplish as his body trembled continuously. All the kings and big shots of the Northridge had conflicted expressions when they saw that. To think that the mighty King North Ridge who ruled over the North Ridge for more than 100,000 years would end up in such a sorry state today. Father! Tang Qing'er exclaimed. She wanted to charge forward recklessly, but Uncle Chen stopped her. Sigh. King North Ridge sighed internally, despondent and disheartened. The difference between them was way too great. With the Edict of the Hell Lord, almost no Hell King expert under his lead dared to stand with him. Furthermore, he could not defend against the kings of the ancient Nether race at all. Today his fate was already decided. Since Hell Lord Frost Springs wanted him dead, there was no way Hell Lord Frost Springs would give him any chance. King North Ridge turned to look at his descendants behind him. Finally, his gaze landed on Tang Qing'er and a trace of hope flashed through his heart. Shintuing, to begin with, Qing'er should have married into the South Forest after today. She's no longer a part of our Tang family in the North Ridge. King North Ridge looked at the young master of the South Forest and said softly, on account of your past relationship with her, please take in Qing'er. What did you say? Before King North Ridge could finish, the young master of the South Forest interrupted him hurriedly. With a disgusted expression, he waved his hand and said, there's no past relationship between me and Tang Qing'er. We're just acquaintances. You. King North Ridge was enraged and glared angrily. The young master of the South Forest looked at Ming Feng's side with a wary expression, afraid that he would be implicated by King North Ridge. He scolded hurriedly, old thing, shut up. You're truly devious. To think that you would want to drag the South Forest into the water even before you die. Tang Qing'er glared at the young master of the South Forest coldly with an indifferent gaze, as though she was looking at a stranger. Ah, interesting. Ming Feng could not help but laugh and clap. King North Ridge, take a look. Even if I'm willing to let the Tang family off, no one will dare to take you in. The young master of the South Forest swept his gaze and suddenly caught sight of the martial Dao Prime body who was still sitting in his seat calmly. He said hurriedly as though he was trying to take credit, Lord Ming Feng, I'd like to report something to you. Oh. Ming Feng raised his brow. The young master of the South Forest pointed to the martial Dao Prime body not far away. Lord, please take a look. That purple-robed cultivator with the silver mask isn't someone from Frost Springs Hell. He once said that he came from the heavenly world of the medium Kiliacosm. The medium Kiliacosm? Ming Feng frowned. How is that possible? However, after his spirit consciousness swept past the martial Dao Prime body, he quickly discovered that the latter indeed exuded the aura of a living person. Tang Qing'er glared at the young master of the South Forest and said in a deep voice, today is a calamity for the Tang family of the North Ridge. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Fellow Taoist Desolate Marshal has not joined the North Ridge. Shintuing, don't implicate the innocent. Tang Qing'er knew that she would not be able to escape death today. However, she was the one who invited the martial Dao Prime body over. If he was implicated, it would truly be an undeserved calamity. Tisk tisk. The young master of the South Forest pouted his lips and said in a strange manner, you're actually so nervous and are starting to defend him? I've long noticed that you're a slut with a licentious nature. Lord Ming Feng, as you can see, I truly don't have much of a relationship with this slut. In order to sever ties with Tang Qing'er, the young master of the South Forest even resorted to filthy language. The young master of the South Forest continued, Tang Qing'er knew that he was from the heavenly world but she still took him in. It's clear that the Tang family of North Ridge has been disloyal for a long time. Tang Qing'er's intentions were clearly to attain personal growth. However, Ming Feng nodded in satisfaction. In that case, it's not unjust for us to destroy the Tang family of the North Ridge. How wise. The young master of the South Forest flattered and continued, also, this person killed a Nether general in Corpse Mountain Ridge the moment he arrived at Frost Springs Hell. When he heard that, the territorial lord of Corpse Mountain Ridge's expression changed and he asked, he was the one who killed Nether General North Black. That's right. The young master of the South Forest nodded hurriedly. I saw it with my own eyes. Furthermore, after he killed Nether General North Black, Tang Qing'er even wanted to take the initiative to cover up the matter. At that time, I argued using logic that an outsider shouldn't be able to massacre living beings of our Frost Springs Hell casually. Furthermore, it was a noble being of the ancient Nether race at that. However, that slut, Tang Qing'er, refused to listen and insisted on protecting that person. The young master of the South Forest tried his best to put on a performance and described everything in a fake manner, getting himself out cleanly. Suddenly Ming Feng laughed and shifted his gaze to the martial Tao prime body, saying coldly, "An outsider who's been hiding the entire time actually dares to kill someone from the ancient Nether race? You sure are bold." The martial Tao prime body ignored Ming Feng and merely drank the wine in his hands in one gulp before putting down the wine glass and saying indifferently, "So what if I killed him? What can you do to me?" Chapter 2652 Exhalation into a Sword. 2652 Exhalation into a Sword. Ha! Ming Feng was stunned when the martial Tao prime body said that. He had lived for so long but he had never seen someone so tactless. Given the current situation, even King Northridge had to bow down and resign to his fate, allowing them to slaughter and exterminate his entire family. Yet this outsider dared to provoke him? Ming Feng was stunned for a moment before laughing uncontrollably. Initially, the hall fell into a strange silence. Thereafter, an even more chaotic commotion broke out. The kings and big shots of the various factions looked at the martial Tao prime body as though they were looking at a dead man. That person is way too arrogant. He's pretending to be calm before his death. He must have peed his pants down there. He's just putting on a tough front since he knows he's going to die. That's right. As an outsider who killed someone from the ancient Nether race, how can he survive? Sigh. Tang Qing'er looked at the martial Tao prime body helplessly and sighed. Initially, she wanted to not involve the martial Tao prime body. However, the words of the martial Tao prime body were akin to pitting himself against Ming Feng. No matter what she said, there was no way these experts of the ancient Nether race would let the martial Tao prime body off. Ha 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 ha. The young master of the South Forest pointed at the martial Tao prime body and burst into laughter. Lord Ming Feng, did you see how arrogant that person was? How dare this fellow rebut in front of you lords? It's fine if he doesn't kneel down and beg for mercy, but he's even sitting there drinking. He's not taking you guys seriously at all. The young master of the South Forest became inexplicably excited and shouted when he saw how tactless the martial Tao prime body was. He was not wrong about one thing. Indeed, the martial Tao prime body did not take Ming Feng and the others seriously. To be precise, the martial Tao prime body could ignore all the experts in the main hall of the North Ridge Palace. The young master of the South Forest continued, "Hey, desolate marshal? Didn't you say that you prepared a congratulatory gift for King Northridge? Take it out for us to take a look." Haha, don't blame me for not reminding you. If you don't take it out now, you won't have the chance later on. Oh. Just as Ming Feng was about to attack, he revealed an interested expression and smiled mockingly. "What congratulatory gift did you prepare? Take it out and let me broaden my horizons as well." This birthday banquet was about to turn into an annihilation funeral for the Tang family of the North Ridge. No matter what congratulatory gift the martial Tao prime body brought out, it would be a joke in the eyes of everyone and he would only be humiliating himself. My congratulatory gift only contains a single sentence. The martial Tao prime body said indifferently, "The Tang family of the North Ridge is under my protection." Ha! Everyone in the hall could not believe their ears as they looked at the martial Tao prime body who was still sitting at the table in disbelief. What gibberish did this person just say? I didn't hear him clearly. I think he said that the Tang family of the North Ridge is under his protection. He must have drunk too much and is now delirious. Discussions broke out in the main hall of the North Ridge Palace. Tang Qing'er looked at the martial Tao prime body in a daze, just like the first time she knew him. Although those words sounded ridiculous, for some unknown reason, Tang Qing'er suddenly felt an incomparably powerful will coming from the martial Tao prime body. It was as though every single word spoken by the martial Tao prime body carried immense weight. King Northridge sat limply on the ground. At that moment, he turned around as well and looked at the young man he had once reprimanded with a lost expression. Could he have judged wrongly? Could this outsider of the heavenly world truly be able to save the Tang family? That thought flashed through his mind, but King Northridge quickly denied it. That was impossible. Although he could not tell the cultivation realm of the martial Tao prime body, this young man was less than 10,000 years old. Even if he was extremely talented and cultivated to the level of a Hell King, so what? Could this young man be stronger than him? If even he could not defeat the experts of the ancient Nether race, what could this young man do? This lad was probably too young and inexperienced. He must not have suffered any setbacks in the heavenly world, and that was the reason why he was arrogant and conceited. However, King Northridge could no longer be bothered to reprimand the martial Tao Prime Body. In his opinion, the martial Tao Prime Body would most likely die even before him, given his repeated provocations towards the ancient Nether race. Suddenly, King Northridge laughed self-deprecatingly. For a moment, he actually fantasized about relying on this young man who was less than 10,000 years old to protect the Tang family. It was truly ridiculous. Lord Mingfeng, did you guys hear that? It was only then that the young master of the South Forest reacted and said hurriedly, this person declared that he wanted to protect the Tang family of the North Ridge. He's openly going against all of you. Mingfeng waved it off casually. He's just an ant. Kill him. The Nether King, who had just exchanged blows with King Northridge, arrived before the martial Tao Prime Body in a flash and slapped the top of the latter's head. That palm strike sealed almost all escape routes for the martial Tao Prime Body. Not only did the Nether King want to kill the martial Tao Prime Body, he wanted to do it instantly. That way, the might and methods of the ancient Nether race could be displayed. The martial Tao Prime Body did not stand up when he saw the towering palm of the Nether King expert descend. He merely lowered his head and remained seated motionlessly. Haha. The young master of the South Forest could not help but laugh. Are you scared out of your wits? At the side, Hell King South Essence analyzed calmly, although the methods of this Nether King seem simple, it's because he simplified everything. His aura is ferocious and invincible. Coupled with the blood chi of the ancient Nether race, he has already suppressed this person completely. It's not that he doesn't want to move, it's that he can't and can only watch helplessly as he's slapped to death. Tang Qinger could not help but turn her head to avoid her gaze. She could no longer bear to continue watching. Back in Weeping Soul Ridge, she brought the martial Tao Prime Body back to the North Ridge out of curiosity and goodwill. To think that she would harm this person instead. In a flash, the Nether King expert's palm descended and was less than a foot away from the head of the martial Tao Prime Body. Right then, the martial Tao Prime Body suddenly raised his eyes. Two shuddering lights burst forth from his eyes as he exhaled. Scram. In that voice, the martial Tao Prime Body did not use the secret skill of myriad beings sound. Even so, with his powerful physique and bloodline, he still released an extremely violent impact. The Nether King shuddered and felt a sharp pain in his ears. His mind buzzed and his consciousness went blank for a moment. At the same time, chi gathered in the mouth of the martial Tao Prime Body and formed a sword. A white light tore through the air and entered the glabella of the Nether King instantly. Initially, this was the most common method of immortality cultivation, exhaling air to form a sword. As long as the other party was prepared, such methods posed no threat to cultivators of the same cultivation realm. However, the might of the sword chi spat out by the powerful lungs of the martial Tao Prime Body was unparalleled and could even penetrate the Nether King's body. Coupled with the powerful sound domain impact, the Nether King was momentarily dazed and could not dodge at all. Before he could regain consciousness, his essence spirit was pierced by the sword chi spat out by the martial Tao Prime Body and he died on the spot. Chapter 2653 Killing Nether Kings like Slaying Dogs. 2653 Killing Nether Kings like Slaying Dogs. Thud. The figure of the Nether King smashed heavily onto the ground and rolled down the steps. His eyes were widened and he had a lost expression, unable to rest in peace. Even till his death, the Nether King did not know how he was killed. The clamor in the surroundings vanished instantly. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at everything in disbelief. Suddenly, the main hall of the North Ridge Palace turned so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Initially, Tang Qinger avoided her gaze and could not bear to watch. However, when she heard the roar of the martial Tao Prime Body followed by the fall of someone, the hall went silent. Everything was over. Sighing internally, Tang Qinger turned around and her mouth was agape. Everything before her was completely different from what she had imagined. The martial Tao Prime Body was still sitting far away without moving. In fact, he did not even get up and was safe and sound. Instead, the Nether King expert who had just attacked laid on his back below. His glabella was pierced and fresh blood flowed. He was no longer alive. Well? Tang Qinger was dumbfounded, unable to understand what was going on. Uncle Chen, what just happened? Tang Qinger could not help but ask. Uncle Chen glared at the back of the martial Tao Prime Body with a shocked expression as though he had seen a ghost. After hesitating for a moment, he murmured, that Nether King seemed to have died from a single breath of air from him. Tang Qing'er was dumbfounded. The Nether King expert was killed by a single breath of air from Desolate Marshal. Even Uncle Chin found it unbelievable when he said it himself. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. King Northridge looked at the Nether King expert who fell not far away from him and gulped. The way he looked at the martial Tao prime body gradually changed. At that moment, he realized how terrifying the young man he had reprimanded a few days ago was. Of course, King Northridge did not think that Desolate Marshal had the ability to fight against Ming Feng and the others. After all, Desolate Marshal was alone while there were more than 10 Nether King experts on Ming Feng's side. Ming Feng had even integrated the 10 Great Hell Ridges. There were thousands of Hell King experts in the 10 Great Hell Ridges alone. How could a single person fight against such a tremendous power? Strictly speaking, the Nether King died aggrievedly. As a Nether King expert, he was killed mercilessly by Desolate Marshal before he could even release his strongest methods such as the Grotto-heaven and the Hellfrost Springs bloodline phenomenon. Once Ming Feng and the others were on guard, they would not give the young man any chance. At that thought, King Northridge suddenly said, "Desolate Marshal, leave this place quickly with Qing'er and some of the Tang family's bloodline. Don't worry about me." It was impossible for him to protect everyone from the Tang family. It was already extremely fortunate as long as the Tang family's bloodline could be preserved. "You want to leave after killing a Nether King of our ancient Nether race?" Ming Feng's expression was dark as he said coldly, "Let me tell you, the void around the main hall has long been sealed by us. No one from the Tang family of the North Ridge will be able to leave alive today." The moment he said that, more than 10 Nether Kings stood out at the same time and stood in midair, surrounding the martial Tao prime body. They were just waiting for Ming Feng to give the order to kill. The martial Tao prime body stood up slowly. Ming Feng could not see the expression of the martial Tao prime body. However, through the deep and calm eyes of the latter, he suddenly realized that this person might not have any intention of leaving. Suddenly Ming Feng felt uneasy. However, he took a deep breath and composed himself rapidly, saying coldly, "Everyone, there's no need to hold back. Kill him." Boom. The moment he said that, the martial Tao prime body stomped on the ground and leaped into the air at an extremely fast speed. Instantly he arrived before a Nether King and punched. There were no fancy moves or feints, it was just a direct punch. Although it seemed simple, it contained the will and technique of the martial Tao. It was unparalleled. In the heavenly world, Desolate Marshal's fist had once caused immense psychological trauma to the immortal king experts of the 9 firmament immortal domain and pure land of bliss. That power could be said to be apocalyptic and unstoppable, clearing all gods and fiends in its way. Divine weapons, dermic treasures and minor and major grotto heavens would all be shattered. And now, the living beings in hell would also be able to sense the fist of the martial Tao prime body, the will of the martial Tao and the ferocious and invincible burst power. The Nether King expert had a shocked expression. He was about to suffocate after being punched by the martial Tao prime body, and the ancient Nether bloodline in his body became sluggish and difficult to activate. Bang. Under countless gazes, a Nether King expert was punched into a blood mist by the martial Tao prime body and his essence spirit was destroyed. It was way too tragic. At the very least, the previous Nether King died with a full corpse. This Nether King was ruptured by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body without a corpse left. The martial Tao prime body did not stop and shifted once more. Arriving before another Nether King, he threw another punch without another word. Suppressing the shock in his heart, the Nether King expert had already snapped out of his stupor from the scene earlier on. He hurriedly raised his arms and circulated his blood chi in a defensive posture. Bang. The Nether King expert vanished. There was only a blood mist left where he was. Another Nether King expert was ruptured and his essence spirit was destroyed. Swoosh. In a flash, the martial Tao prime body arrived before the third Nether King. The Nether King had a grim expression and had already summoned his Grotto-heaven spirit treasure in advance. It was a gigantic black shield that was filled with spikes that shone coldly. The person's reaction was extremely fast. The moment he saw the martial Tao prime body descend, he used the black shield in front of him and curled up, hiding behind it. The martial Tao prime body did not dodge. As though he could not see the Grotto-heaven spirit treasure of the Nether King, he continued punching towards the black shield. Boom. Accompanied by a loud bang, the black shield was pierced by a punch from the martial Tao prime body. After the punch of the martial Tao prime body penetrated the black shield, The remaining strength that was not exhausted shattered the Nether King expert who was hiding at the back, killing him on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the martial Tao prime body killed 3 Nether Kings with 3 punches. It was direct and violent. Those were clean kills. Decisive to kill. The kings and big shots in the main hall were shocked. The ancient Nether race was known for their strong blood chi and physique. Their melee combat strength was almost invincible among their peers. To think that the 3 Nether King experts would be as weak as ants and shrimps in the face of the purple-robed man. Even the Grotto-heaven spirit treasure was penetrated by a single punch from the purple-robed man like paper. The 3 Nether Kings were only equivalent to ordinary minor Grotto-heaven immortal kings in the heavenly world. Given the perfected true martial Tao body of the martial Tao prime body, he could penetrate their minor Grotto-heaven without even using his blood chi, let alone a Grotto-heaven spirit treasure. The impact on everyone present was way too great. The martial Tao prime body was like a peerless god of death, punching the Nether Kings one after another in an invincible manner. The lives of the initially noble and powerful Nether Kings were worthless at the moment. He killed the Nether Kings like he was slaying dogs. Chapter 2654 Incinerating the Frost Springs. 2654 Incinerating the Frost Springs. Initially, Ming Feng had no intention of attacking personally. However, the moment the battle broke out, 3 Nether Kings died and that enraged him. Kill? Ming Feng leaped up and roared, "Bloodline phenomenon." Splash. Ming Feng's bloodline circulated and was pushed to its limits instantly. A gigantic spring appeared behind him and a chilling spring water phenomenon spewed out. The remaining few Nether Kings did not dare to be careless and released the bloodline phenomenon of Hellfrost Springs as well, charging towards the martial Tao prime body. The reason why the bloodline of the ancient Nether race was powerful was because they were born from the Frost Springs and their bloodline carried the power of the Frost Springs. Although the bloodline phenomenon did not condense the true Hellfrost Springs, the phenomenon alone was sufficiently powerful. Even King North Ridge's Grotto-heaven earlier on was frozen. But now, with Ming Feng as the leader, the 11 Nether King experts released the bloodline phenomenon of Hellfrost Springs at the same time and the temperature of the entire hall plummeted while a mighty power burst forth. A look of despair flashed through King North Ridge's eyes. There was no way they could defend against that power. 11 Frost Spring phenomenons descended at the same time. If he was caught in the same position, he would freeze to death instantly even with his major Grotto-heaven. The martial Tao prime body sneered and stood in midair without dodging. Suddenly, 2 purple flames burned in his deep eyes. Bang! Boom! Similarly, the martial Tao prime body released his blood chi and the sound of raging tides slapping the shore sounded from his body. The blood chi was so strong that as long as everyone around closed their eyes, they would feel as though the entire main hall of the North Ridge Palace was submerged in a vast sea. The blood chi of the martial Tao prime body emitted a scorching heat. The surrounding void was almost distorted from the heat and the Nether chi was already burned to ashes. 11 Hellfrost Springs surged over and bumped into the high-temperature airwaves emitted from the body of the martial Tao prime body. Hot and cold, the 2 extremity powers collided with a strange sound. Ching, 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 ching. The 11 Hellfrost Springs could not charge over and were blocked by the powerful blood chi of the martial Tao prime body, emitting white smoke. The cultivators were shocked. The blood chi of this outsider was so strong that he could fight against the bloodline of the ancient Nether race. Furthermore, he could defend against 11 Hellfrost Springs single-handedly. In the memories of the cultivators, this was simply heaven-defying and impossible. The only ones who could defend against the bloodline of the ancient Nether race were the ancient Nether race. But now, the appearance of the martial Tao prime body broke the understanding of the living beings of hell. Gulp. Gulp. The 2 parties were in a stalemate. In less than 2 to 3 breaths, the 11 Hellfrost Springs began to bubble and show signs of boiling. Hellfrost Springs was known as the coldest water in the world. But now they were boiling because of the blood chi of someone else. Who would believe this if they had not seen it with their own eyes? Everyone, attack with all your might and kill this lad. Ming Feng hollered and summoned the bloodline phenomenon of his major Grotto-heaven as he continued channeling Hellfrost Springs. The void behind him suddenly collapsed and a dark and deep Grotto-heaven appeared, emitting a sinister and terrifying aura. 11 Grotto-heavens crushed down at the same time as the 11 Frost Spring phenomenons. I'd be a little interested if it was the real Hellfrost Springs. The martial Tao prime body shook his head gently. However, these are mere phenomenons that are way too weak. The moment he said that, the martial Tao prime body channeled his blood chi to its limits and seemed to have vanished from the spot, replaced by a gigantic furnace. There were a few different flames burning in the furnace. Martial spirit fire, dragon phoenix flame, tribulation fire, red lotus karmic fire and hellfire. The 5 types of flames burned day and night and had long burned the furnace scarlet. The bloodline phenomenon of the martial Tao prime body, the heaven and earth furnace. Xing. The hell frost springs of Ming Feng and the others could not even break through the blood chi of the martial Tao prime body and could not defend against the impact of the heaven and earth furnace. In the blink of an eye, the 11 hell frost springs evaporated into nothingness. As the physique and bloodline of the martial Tao prime body grew, the power of the heaven and earth furnace increased as well. Some Nether King experts who did not manage to release their Grotto-heavens in time were completely exposed to the heaven and earth furnace after the frost spring phenomenons evaporated. The few Nether Kings were also refined into ashes by the heaven and earth furnace in a few breaths and their essence spirits were destroyed. Even though Ming Feng released his Grotto-heaven, due to his cultivation limit, it was only a single major Grotto-heaven and it could not defend against the impact of the heaven and earth furnace. All the other minor Grotto-heavens burned with raging flames. The minor Grotto-heavens that were initially dark and sinister were filled with flames that surged into the skies. They were burned red from the inside out and were filled with cracks, ready to collapse at any moment. After the martial Tao prime body released his bloodline phenomenon, the heaven and earth furnace, the attacks of the 11 Nether King experts crumbled instantly and they suffered heavy casualties. Only Ming Feng could barely protect himself with his major Grotto-heaven that was near perfected. The other Nether King experts were either dead or injured. He was the only one left and could die on the spot at any moment. Right now, the martial Tao prime body had only released his bloodline phenomenon and had not truly counterattacked. But the cultivators were shocked. King Northridge's eyes widened in disbelief. More than half of the 11 Nether King experts of the ancient Nether race were killed by a single bloodline phenomenon of Desolate Martial. The terror of Desolate Martial had even exceeded King Northridge's imagination. On the other side, the young master of the South Forest's face was pale and he gulped with a wary expression. He had not expected the outsider he and Tang Qinger encountered on their way back to be so powerful. In his eyes, these Nether King experts were supreme and unstoppable. However, their lives were worthless in the hands of Desolate Martial. Why are you guys still just standing and watching? As Ming Feng held on, he turned around and roared at the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges, "Everyone attack! If this person doesn't die today and the Hell Lord blames us, all of you will have to die as well." The 10 territorial lords felt chills run down their spines when they heard that. Earlier on, it was not that they wanted to stand by idly. It was because they were intimidated by the terrifying methods of the martial Tao prime body and were wary. That was why they did not attack immediately. But now that Ming Feng said that, there was no way out for everyone. Go. The territorial lord of Corpse Mountain Ridge said coldly, "There are thousands of Hell King experts in the hall and that means thousands of Grotto-heavens. I don't believe that we won't be able to kill this person if we all join forces." That's right. The territorial lord of Verdant Flame Ridge said in a deep voice as well, "Each of us will summon a Grotto-heaven spirit treasure. Even if we use brute force we can smash this red furnace into pieces." The 10 territorial lords exchanged glances and made a decision at the same time, standing on Ming Feng's side to suppress the martial Tao prime body. Ming Feng was backed by Hell Lord Frost Springs who controlled the entire Frost Springs Hell. However, Desolate Martial was merely an outsider who was alone. Even a 3-year-old child could make the right choice to join a side without thinking. Chapter 2655 Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. 2655 Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Under the orders of the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges, thousands of Hell Kings soared into the air and released their Grotto-heavens. The gigantic and majestic main hall of the North Ridge Palace could not withstand the impact and collapsed instantly. Thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes were released. What kind of scene was that? It was simply destructive. The entire North Ridge city shook and quaked as mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. The Hell Generals and Hell Pawns in the city did not know what had happened at all. Everyone only saw the Hell King experts rising in midair and the thousands of dark and sinister Grotto-heavens. Their faces turned pale from fear and they retreated one after another, afraid that they would be involved. Tang Qing'er looked up at the figure who was surrounded by thousands of Hell Kings with a nervous expression. How could he defend against thousands of Hell King experts and thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes? Hell Lord Frost Springs was probably the only one who could deal with such a huge formation. Although she knew that it was impossible, Tang Qing'er was still looking forward to a miracle. The martial Dao Prime body stood in midair and sensed the thousands of Grotto-heavens of different sizes and Dharmic Daos around him. His eyes darkened and the flames burning in them burned brighter. In order to divine and perfect the martial Dao, the Prime body searched everywhere for cultivation techniques and secret skills. Now that he was in the Hell world and could not leave for the time being, he might as well study the Dharmic Dao inheritance of the Hell world. There was nothing faster and more direct than refining the Grotto-heavens of Hell King Sto come into contact with the profound Dharmic Daos of the Hell world. Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. The figure of the martial Dao Prime Lord became indistinct and a gigantic and strange Grotto-heaven appeared around him. The martial Dao Prime body referred to this dark Grotto-heaven as the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven in reference to the beginning and origin of the martial Dao. The Essence Martial Grotto-heaven was not the true martial Dao Grotto-heaven. The derivation of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven could not be replicated and was a variable of the world. The Dao body was the Dao fruit and was formed after shattering the true martial Dao body. The Dharmic formulation for the next realm of the martial Dao had yet to be established. The martial Dao Grotto-heaven should correspond to that Dharmic formulation. Due to the uniqueness of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, it was beyond the three realms so it could not grow even if it absorbed and plundered heaven and earth essence chi. The best way for the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven to grow was to devour other Grotto-heavens and refine all sorts of Dharmic Dao inheritances. In the eyes of the martial Dao Prime body, the thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes and Dharmic Daos were not Grotto-heavens at all. Instead, it was like a gigantic buffet banquet for the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Actually, the moment the martial Dao Prime body released the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, the intense sense of danger that suddenly appeared at the nine firmament meet appeared in his mind once more. However, the martial Dao Prime body was surrounded and had no time to care about anything else. Ming Feng and the other experts had grim expressions when they saw the martial Dao Prime body release his Grotto-heaven. If the martial Dao Prime Lord released a perfected Grotto-heaven, the thousands of Hell Kings might not be able to gain any advantage even if they joined forces. However, when they saw that the martial Dao Prime body had only released a minor Grotto-heaven, they heaved a sigh of relief. I was wondering who he was. So, he's just an ordinary Hell King who condensed a minor Grotto-heaven. We're overreacting a little. Any one of the 10 territorial lords can suppress that minor Grotto-heaven of his. In my opinion, we shouldn't be careless. This person has a powerful physique and bloodline. He even killed a few Nether King experts just now. Listening to the discussions around him, Ming Feng said coldly, "Kill him first and don't let anything else happen." Kill? The territorial lords of the 10 great hell ridges exchanged glances and raised their arms. Under the lead of Ming Feng and the 10 territorial lords, thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes emitted a terrifying aura and suppressed towards the martial Dao Prime body. Devour. The figure of the martial Dao Prime body had already vanished completely, leaving only a dark and deep Grotto-heaven in midair. The Essence Martial Grotto-heaven began to spin continuously, forming a gigantic vortex that tore and devoured the various Grotto-heavens that were charging over. The major Grotto-heavens of Ming Feng and the 10 territorial lords were the first to come into contact with the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Initially, they planned to join forces to suppress the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven into nothingness in one go. Unexpectedly, the moment their Grotto-heavens came into contact with the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, they began to shake and the power of their Grotto-heavens drained rapidly. They could barely even maintain their forms as Grotto-heavens and were gradually dispersing. What? This person is actually devouring the major Grotto-heavens. Ming Feng and the 10 territorial lords shuddered. In the Hell world, if one wanted to devour and refine the power of Grotto-heavens, they could only search for some shattered fragments of Grotto-heavens and slowly digest them after a long period of cultivation. Who would do it the same way as the martial Dao Prime body as though he was wolfing down a meal? Swallow, swallow. Ming Feng and the others did not retreat or dodge at all. Instead, they revealed ferocious expressions. Since your appetite is so great, I'll let you eat your fill. It was extremely ridiculous for a minor Grotto-heaven to devour their major Grotto-heavens to begin with. It was like an anaconda with its mouth wide open devouring a divine dragon. Wasn't that nothing but a death wish of the anaconda? Apart from their major Grotto-heavens, there were also thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes behind them. The conflict between so many Grotto-heavens and Dharmic Tao inheritances was intense. Even major Grotto-heavens and perfected Grotto-heavens could not withstand it, let alone minor Grotto-heavens. Perhaps only a pocket universe created by an Emperor Realm expert could accommodate all of them. In reality, it was as Ming Feng and the others had expected. At the 9 firmament meet, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven managed to devour the Grotto-heavens of the 19 supreme immortal kings without feeling any strain. But now that there were thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes, it was getting a little much for the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven to handle. It was impossible for the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven to refine the Dharmic Tao inheritances of these Grotto-heavens instantly. It could only temporarily accommodate the Dharmic Taos of these Grotto-heavens and would need a long time to divine, absorb and refine them. However, there was no time for the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven to do that at all. The vortex of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven grew larger and larger. However, the spinning speed became slower and slower. If this continued, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven would definitely explode. Given the current methods of the Martial Tao Prime Body, it was not difficult for him to charge out against the encirclement of thousands of Hell Kings. No one could block his path. However, that would make it difficult for him to protect the Tang family of the North Ridge. Right then, the Martial Tao Prime Body noticed a strange fluctuation coming from the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Back in Greater Avicii, when he followed the guidance of the Soul Lantern, he saw an ancient mirror called the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. The ancient mirror looked extraordinary. However, the Martial Tao Prime Body could not see anything special about it. Strangely, the Netherworld Treasure Mirror could not be placed in his storage bag. Therefore, the Martial Tao Prime Body placed it in his shirt for the time being. Now that he had transformed into a Grotto-heaven, the Netherworld Treasure Mirror naturally entered his Essence Martial Grotto-heaven and floated inside. The abnormal fluctuation came from the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. Chapter 2656 Crazy Plunder. 2656 Crazy Plunder. As though it sensed the auras of the thousands of Grotto-heavens outside, there seemed to be a mysterious power flowing on the surface of the Netherworld Treasure Mirror, gradually forming a gray vortex. Immediately after, a powerful devouring power burst forth from the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. The Grotto-heaven powers that the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven could not digest immediately were devoured by the Netherworld Treasure Mirror and the pressure on the Martial Tao Prime Body decreased. That change happened in the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. The spirit consciousnesses of Ming Feng and the other Nether King and Hell King experts could not enter the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven that was deep and dark, so they naturally did not know what happened. Initially, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven of the Martial Tao Prime Body had already gradually stopped spinning. At that moment, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven circulated once more and the devouring power that erupted was even more ferocious and powerful than before. The range of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven suddenly expanded. The expressions of Ming Feng and the 10 territorial lords changed starkly. They reacted extremely quickly and retreated in a hurry. However, the group of Hell King experts behind them could not dodge in time and were devoured by the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. They disappeared before they could even scream. Because of the eruption of the Netherworld Treasure Mirror, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven did not just devour the surrounding Grotto-heavens, it even devoured more than 100 Hell King experts. That scene caused panic in the eyes of the Hell King experts. Not only did the dark Grotto-heaven that they surrounded not shatter, it even devoured more than 100 Hell King experts along with their Grotto-heavens. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a strange and terrifying scene? The Martial Tao Prime Body was also observing the commotion here. His Essence Martial Grotto-heaven had yet to reach that level. The one who released such might was not the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, but the Netherworld Treasure Mirror in the depths of it. The Essence Martial Grotto-heaven could clearly sense that the Netherworld Treasure Mirror had a strong desire to devour the Grotto-heavens and even the flesh of the Hell King experts outside. The Netherworld Treasure Mirror devoured the power of the Grotto-heavens in large mouthfuls like an extremely hungry ferocious beast. This feeling was a little similar to the Hell Suppression Tripod back then. In order to repair itself, it devoured and refined many divine weapons and dharmic treasures. The Hell King experts did not die after entering the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. They released their Grotto-heavens and endured with all their might. Their essence spirits, flesh and blood existed, and their Grotto-heavens not only contained their Dharmic Daos, but also their powerful wills. Although the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven had devoured them, it was impossible to refine more than 100 Hell Kings in a short period of time. As long as we hold on and join forces with the Hell King experts outside, we'll definitely be able to destroy his Grotto-heaven. That's right. The Hell King experts communicated and tried their best to persevere in the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Right then, an ancient mirror gradually appeared in the depths of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. There was a faint blood glow on the gray mirror. In the depths of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, it was like a single eye that shone with a sanguine light. It was sinister and abnormally terrifying. The 100-odd Hell King experts did not dare to move at all after being targeted by that single eye and felt their blood run cold. An indescribable fear surged into their hearts. That fear seemed to come from the depths of their souls and bloodlines. It was as though they should have been afraid of this single eye since they were born. Initially, under their persistence, they could still maintain their Grotto-heavens by channeling their essence spirits continuously. However, when targeted by that single eye, the 100-odd Grotto-heavens began to sway and show signs of collapse. Suddenly, the ancient mirror transformed into a gray light and streaked around them. Boom, boom, boom. More than 100 Grotto-heavens collapsed. The bodies of the Hell King experts were sliced into two by the gray light as well, and fresh blood flowed, forming a blood fog that dyed a large area of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven red. As for the Netherworld treasure mirror, it seemed to be extremely excited by that scene and charged into the blood fog. The Netherworld treasure mirror was like an ancient behemoth that devoured the surrounding Grotto-heavens in large mouthfuls. In fact, it even devoured the flesh of more than 100 Hell Kings. In just a few breaths, there was no longer any blood in the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Just like that, more than 100 Hell King experts were devoured by the Netherworld treasure mirror without a corpse left. There were only 100-odd storage bags left floating in the Grotto-heaven. The Martial Tao Prime body was secretly alarmed. This Netherworld treasure mirror was way too evil and ferocious. It had been dormant in Greater Avicii for countless years and had awakened after devouring the Grotto-heavens of the various Hell Kings. Now it was recovering as well. The power it wanted to absorb in order to recover did not only come from major and minor Grotto-heavens, but also the flesh and blood of Hell Kings. The Martial Tao Prime body could clearly sense a powerful and terrifying power gradually awakening in the Netherworld treasure mirror. Of course, even though it had just absorbed the power of many Grotto-heavens and devoured the flesh of more than 100 Hell King experts, it was far from enough. On the battlefield, Ming Feng and the others naturally did not know what happened in the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven in the few breaths earlier on. However, they could all sense that the dark Grotto-heaven in the center of the battlefield had become even more terrifying, as though a frightening existence was awakening in the depths of the Grotto-heaven. The devouring range of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven spread continuously and the devouring power became stronger. This was the process of a trade-off. Thousands of Hell King experts summoned Grotto-heavens of various sizes, wanting to suppress the Martial Tao Prime body. But now not only was the Martial Tao Prime body not dead, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven obtained the help of the Netherworld treasure mirror and devoured more and more, becoming stronger. Initially, both parties could still maintain a stalemate. However, as time passed, the power in the Netherworld treasure mirror became stronger and stronger. The Essence Martial Grotto-heaven grew gradually as well, and the Grotto-heaven power of the thousands of Hell King experts drained rapidly. Some ordinary Hell Kings with minor Grotto-heavens could no longer hold on. The Grotto-heavens shattered, and even the Grotto-heaven fragments were devoured by the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. Hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation were destroyed in a single day. Without the Grotto-heavens, the Hell King experts would lose their greatest reliance and would only have their flesh and essence spirits left. This was no longer devouring, it was plundering wildly. Right in front of countless living beings of Hell, figures fell from midair one after another. Many living beings of Hell were shocked. These falling figures were all Hell King experts who dominated a region and were almost at the peak of the combat strength of the Hell world. But now, as though they were severely injured, the Grotto-heavens behind them shattered and their essence chis were greatly damaged. They fell into the ruins below with weak auras. Ming Feng's face was pale and fear finally appeared in his eyes. What kind of monster was this cultivator from the heavenly world? Even with thousands of Hell King experts joining forces, they could not suppress him. Chapter 2657 North Ridge's Intimidation. 2657 North Ridge's Intimidation. The Martial Dao Prime Body observed the situation as he devoured the surrounding Grotto-heavens. Although there were still thousands of Hell King experts outside, they were no longer a threat. The Grotto-heavens of these Hell King experts could no longer hold on. Even the major Grotto-heaven of a Nether King expert like Ming Feng was in danger despite his bloodline and essence spirit of the ancient Nether race. At that moment, most of the Martial Dao Prime Body's attention was not on the surrounding Hell King experts. Instead, he was staring at the Netherworld treasure mirror in the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven. The origin of this ancient mirror was unknown and it was clearly a fierce item. He was not completely at ease with it. The Martial Dao Prime Body observed for a while and had a feeling. The immense power of the Grotto-heavens merely stimulated the Netherworld treasure mirror to awaken. What the ancient mirror truly needed was a large amount of blood essence power. The Martial Dao Prime Body pondered for a moment and decided to close the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, isolating the Netherworld treasure mirror for the time being. The Netherworld treasure mirror clearly contained an extremely evil and terrifying power. Once it woke up, the Martial Dao Prime Body was worried that he might not be able to suppress it and would suffer a backlash instead. Furthermore, after he released Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, the sense of danger that lingered in his heart did not dissipate. He had always been wary. The surrounding Hell Kings were no longer much of a threat to him. Furthermore, in this battle, the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven had devoured enough Grotto-heaven power. If it could digest all of it, it would be enough to advance the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven to another level. At that thought, the figure of the Martial Dao Prime Body reappeared and the dark and deep gigantic Grotto-heaven vanished from the battlefield. With the disappearance of the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, the remaining Hell King experts on the battlefield felt relieved, as though they had just walked through the gates of hell. Many Hell King experts suffered a mental breakdown. Coupled with the fact that their Grotto-heavens were shattered and their essence chi was severely injured, they could no longer hold on and retreated one after another. He can't hold on any longer. When Ming Feng saw the Martial Dao Prime Body put away the Essence Martial Grotto-heaven, he finally saw a glimmer of hope and was energized. He shouted, "Everyone follow me and join forces to kill this person." Ming Feng and the other ancient Nether race experts had no way out. The only way they could survive was to join forces with the remaining Hell King experts to kill the Martial Dao Prime Body. In a flash, the Martial Dao Prime Body arrived before Ming Feng and the others and punched. Boom. That punch burst forth like a volcano with a terrifying aura and was unstoppable, enveloping Ming Feng and the other remaining ancient Nether race experts. After the earlier exchange, not only did the Martial Dao Prime Body not exhaust himself at all, he even received a huge replenishment and his strength increased. As for Ming Feng and the others, they became extremely weak and even the Grotto-heavens behind them swayed. Against the Martial Dao Prime Body's punch that contained the Dharmic Dao and will of the Martial Dao, there was no way he could defend against it. The Martial Dao Prime Body killed decisively and did not give Ming Feng and the others any chance to catch their breath. The Grotto-heavens behind Ming Feng and the others collapsed instantly. Without the protection of the major Grotto-heaven, it was equivalent to Ming Feng and the others exposed to the fist of the Martial Dao Prime Body directly. Poof, poof, poof. The experts of the ancient Nether race, including Ming Feng, were blasted apart by a single punch from the Martial Dao Prime Body and turned into balls of blood fog. Their essence spirits and bodies were destroyed without a corpse left. At this point of the battle, more than 10 ancient Nether race beings were dead and none of them were spared. When they saw that, although there were still thousands of Hell King experts left, they were so frightened that they lost their fighting spirit and were in no mood to fight. Thousands of Hell King experts collapsed completely, including the territorial lords of the 10 great Hell Ridges. None of them dared to stay on the spot and fled in all directions. However, the surrounding void had already been sealed by Ming Feng and the others. The Hell King experts could not open it for the time being. The Martial Dao Prime Body who was behind them had already arrived. The easiest way to capture bandits was to nab their leader. The Martial Dao Prime Body chased forward and attacked the 10 territorial lords right away. There was no room for negotiation between the two parties. Furthermore, this was hell and there was no logic to speak of. Everything was paved with blood and slaughter. Bang, bang, bang. A few territorial lords of Hell Ridge were caught up by the martial Dao Prime body and killed one after another. The martial Dao Prime body pushed his way through the thousands of Hell King experts and no one could withstand his sharpness. It was a complete suppression. In the blink of an eye, the territorial lords of the 10 great Hell Ridges were dead. This intimidation, terrifying methods and absolute dominance over the battlefield had a huge psychological impact on the remaining Hell King experts. The Hell King experts merely felt reverence towards Hell Lord Frost Springs. However, at that moment they only felt intense fear when facing the martial Dao Prime body. The living beings of Hell in North Ridge City were shocked by the scene before them as well. The noble and powerful Nether kings of the ancient Nether race were all dead. The territorial lords of the 10 great Hell Ridges died on the spot as well. Those powerful existences that they could only look up to normally were as weak as ants in the hands of the purple-robed cultivator. This was not a huge battle. This was a complete massacre. King North Ridge, Tang Qinger and many other members of the Tang family were dumbfounded. Never in Tang Qinger's wildest dreams did she expect that the person she met by accident would be so powerful that he could trample the entire North Ridge beneath his feet. Furthermore, she did not expect that in the end, their Tang family could only rely on an outsider from the heavenly world to preserve the inheritance and continuation of their bloodline. King North Ridge had a conflicted expression. He recalled how he reprimanded this young man in his chamber a few days ago to establish his dominance and could not help but feel a lingering fear. At that time, if this young man had taken it to heart, he would have probably died even before his birthday banquet today. On the side of the young master of the South Forest, his face was ashen and he was already trembling in fear. It was only at that moment that he realized how ruthless the person he offended earlier on was. This person could kill him as simply as squashing an ant. South Essence, hurry and take me out of this place. The young master of the South Forest said with a trembling voice, the fear in his heart obvious. Hell King South Essence said bitterly in a low voice, the surrounding void is sealed and can't be opened for the time being. How can we leave? We have to leave this place even if you can't teleport. Even if we have to run with our 2 legs, we have to leave. The young master of the South Forest said with a trembling voice, if we don't leave now, we definitely won't be able to leave later on. Hell King South Essence knew in his heart that the young master of the South Forest was right. With such a huge change happening in the North Ridge, he should indeed return to the South Forest as soon as possible and report this matter. The seal on the surrounding void merely affected spatial teleportation but not normal departure. Go. When Hell Lord South Essence saw that the situation was chaotic, he planned to take advantage of the chaos to leave this place secretly. Of course, the 2 of them did not dare to walk too quickly, afraid that they would attract the attention of the martial Dao Prime body. Before long, the battle in midair was already coming to an end. After Ming Feng's group and the 10 territorial lords died, the remaining Hell King experts were utterly defeated and could not defend against the killing of the martial Dao Prime body. Before long, some Hell King experts could not hold on any longer and knelt down, expressing their submission. In the Hell world, the only thing many living beings believed in was strength. Right now, the martial Dao Prime body had displayed absolute strength that surpassed Ming Feng and the territorial lords of the 10 great Hell Ridges. The remaining Hell King experts were completely intimidated and did not dare to resist. Chapter 2658 Too noisy. 2658 Too noisy. The dust of this battle had settled. The battle of thousands of Hell King experts and the collision of thousands of Grotto-heavens of various sizes reduced a large portion of the North Ridge Palace to ruins. North Ridge City was shaken tremendously and the city walls cracked, as though it had experienced a catastrophe. At that moment, there was only a figure standing in midair above the ruins of the North Ridge Palace. He wore a purple robe and a silver mask. He did not reveal any emotions and looked exceptionally cold. It was the purple-robed man who killed more than 10 Nether kings and the territorial lords of the 10 great Hell Ridges. After today, the power of the entire North Ridge would be reshuffled. None of the surviving Hell King experts dared to stand in midair and shoulder to shoulder with the martial Dao Prime body. All of them descended to the ground and bowed down. The North Ridge has changed. A living being from Hell was filled with emotions. Everyone realized that after today's battle, a new King North Ridge had been born. Countless experts had sat on the throne of King North Ridge since ancient times. However, no expert single-handedly crushed thousands of Hell Kings and suppressed the North Ridge with absolute strength to create absolute supremacy. Now that even the Hell King experts bowed one after another, the many living beings of Hell inside and outside North Ridge City did not dare to resist and chose to submit. Of course, many Hell King experts knew in their hearts that today's matter would not end. The purple-robed man had killed more than 10 Nether Kings and even an ancient Nether race envoy with Hell Lord Frost Springs' decree. This was equivalent to declaring war on Hell Lord Frost Springs. Hell Lord Frost Springs would definitely not let this person secure his position as King North Ridge. As long as the news of the Battle of the North Ridge spread to the central capital, Hell Lord Frost Springs would definitely not ignore it. He might even lead a Hell army forth personally. However, given the current situation, everyone could only choose to submit in order to survive. Many living beings of Hell knelt down one after another. The young master of the South Forest and Hell Lord South Essence, who had originally mixed into the crowd and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape from North Ridge City, could only kneel on the spot. The two of them did not expect the battle to end so quickly. Thousands of Hell King experts were intimidated by the martial Tao Prime body and did not dare to resist. The young master of the South Forest cursed internally and lowered his head, not daring to look up at the martial Tao Prime body, afraid that his gaze would attract the attention of the latter. At that moment the two of them could not get up and escape. That would be even more conspicuous. Right now he could only blend into the crowd and hide for the time being. The young master of the South Forest could only hope that the martial Tao Prime body had long forgotten about him. Young master of the South Forest. Right then the voice of the martial Tao Prime body sounded in midair. Immediately after, the young master of the South Forest sensed a terrifying aura that locked onto him. The young master of the South Forest gulped. Knowing that he had been exposed, he could only take a deep breath and look up. The young master of the South Forest raised his head and met the gaze of the martial Tao Prime body. He shuddered in fear and his heart seemed like it was about to jump out of his throat. In fact, there was no killing intent in the eyes of the martial Tao Prime body. He merely looked down at him indifferently. That gaze was as though he was looking at an ant that could be crushed to death. "El Lord Desolate Marshal, I was blind to offend you previously. Please be magnanimous and give me a chance." The young master of the South Forest also realized that he was in danger. After all, he was the one who stood out first in the North Ridge Hall and pointed his finger at the martial Tao Prime body, triggering this battle. The young master of the South Forest could no longer care about his dignity. He knelt on the ground and pressed his palms together, begging, "Lord, don't worry. After I return this time round, I'll definitely prepare generous gifts to apologize to you. I can even persuade my father to submit to you and listen to your orders. The entire South Forest can be merged into the North Ridge. If father witnesses your methods, I'm sure he will even assist you with all his might to fight for the position of the Hell Lord." When they heard that, many living beings of Hell pouted and cursed internally. In order to survive, this young master of the South Forest would really dare to say anything. He was merely the young master of the South Forest. How was he qualified to decide the ownership of the entire South Forest? Although those promises seemed grand, they were nothing more than empty promises. In reality, the young master of the South Forest's intentions were clear as well. As long as he could return to the South Forest alive, he did not care what price he had to pay. That was because as long as he returned to the South Forest, the battle in the North Ridge would have long spread to the central capital. At that time, there would be no need for him to deal with the martial Tao Prime body. Hell Lord Frost Springs would get rid of the martial Tao Prime body. Fellow Taoist Desolate Marshal, don't listen to his nonsense. Right then Tang Qinger suddenly said, "He's spouting nonsense now because he wants to live." Tang Qinger had known the young master of the South Forest for so many years. Coupled with everything that happened today, she had seen through his nature completely. "Qinger." King North Ridge was shocked and reminded hurriedly, "Pay attention to how you address him. Who are you to call him fellow Taoist?" The martial Tao Prime body's battle today had completely stunned that expert who had ruled the North Ridge for more than 100,000 years. "Qinger, please let me explain. I was merely a little muddle-headed previously," the young master of the South Forest said to Tang Qinger hurriedly. Before he could finish, the martial Tao Prime body waved his hand in midair. "You're too noisy." Poof. The two of them were extremely far apart in the void. The martial Tao Prime body waved his hand casually, as though he was chasing away a mosquito. Instantly, the figure of the young master of the South Forest exploded into a blood mist and his essence spirit was destroyed. The young master of the South Forest was dead. Previously, at King Northridge's birthday banquet, the young master of the South Forest took the initiative to provoke him before Ming Feng and the others even appeared. The martial Dao Prime Body ignored this person on account that he and Tang Qing'er were about to become Dao companions and it was King Northridge's birthday today. Right now, the birthday banquet had already turned into a river of blood and corpses everywhere. The martial Dao Prime Body did not mind killing another person at all. As for Hell King South Essence behind the young master of the South Forest, the martial Dao Prime Body did not take him seriously at all. When Hell King South Essence saw the young master of the South Forest die in front of him, his face was pale and he had a wary expression. He did not dare to say anything and did not even dare to show any dissatisfaction. Lord Desolate Marshal, thank you for saving my life. Right then, King Northridge sent a voice transmission to the martial Dao Prime Body's spirit consciousness to express his gratitude. After a pause, King Northridge continued, however, the news of today's battle will spread to the central capital before long. Hell Lord Frost Springs will definitely be furious. At that time you'll have to face the entire Hell army of Frost Springs Hell. You won't be able to defend against that power alone. According to what I know, Hell Lord Frost Springs' cultivation realm has already reached the peak of the Nether King realm and with a perfected Grotto-heaven. Coupled with the physique and bloodline of the ancient Nether race, the billions of troops in the Hell army under him can swarm over and flatten the North Ridge easily. Chapter 2659 Towards the Central Capital. 2659 Towards the Central Capital. King Northridge said, I suggest that you give up on the North Ridge and hide as soon as possible to avoid Hell Lord Frost Springs' pursuit and lie low. The martial Dao Prime Body stood in midair in silence. King Northridge seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly explained, Lord, don't misunderstand. At my age and given my current severe injuries, there's no way I can recover to my peak. I'm not persuading you to give up on the North Ridge because I'm greedy for the position as King Northridge. King Northridge, whose name was Tang Kong, looked at the ruins beneath his feet and looked at the frightened expressions of his clansmen. He sighed internally and sent a voice transmission. To be honest, Lord, from today onwards, my Tang family can't stay in the North Ridge anymore. In the battle at the North Ridge, the martial Dao Prime Body killed everyone. Furthermore, the martial Dao Prime Body was brought back by Tang Qing'er. If Hell Lord Frost Springs hunted down the martial Dao Prime Body, the Tang family would definitely be implicated as well. From now on, the Tang family could only leave the North Ridge and flee everywhere. He did not know how many of the tens of thousands of clansmen of the Tang family would survive in the end. As an immortal king, do you know how to leave the Hell world and return to the medium Kiliacosm? The martial Dao Prime Body did not take Hell Lord Frost Springs to heart at all. Instead, he was concerned about something else. Leave the Hell world, Tang Kong was stunned by the question and had a confused expression. After pondering for a moment, he shook his head. I don't know. There shouldn't be any way. It said that only the Lord of Hell back then could open the barrier between the Hell world and the medium Kiliacosm. But now the Lord of Hell has long died. Ever since the 9 hells were separated, there has yet to be another Lord of Hell chosen to reign supreme over all 9 hells. Pausing for a moment, Tang Kong continued, it's useless even if a new Lord of Hell is born. Due to the special circumstances of the Hell world, the new Lord of Hell will not be able to advance to the Emperor realm and will be far inferior to the Lord of Hell in the past. Therefore, he won't be able to leave the Hell world and head to the medium Kiliacosm. The martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked, what was the cultivation of the Lord of Hell back then? Great Emperor, Tang Kong said. The martial Dao Prime Body frowned slightly. According to Heavenly Wolf, only one great emperor could be born in an era. Heavenly Wolf had once followed Emperor Bo Sun and should not be wrong in this aspect. However, if the Lord of Hell was a great emperor, didn't that mean that there were 2 great emperors coexisting in the Infinite Era? Or could it be that Great Emperor Infinite created the Infinite Era in the medium Kiliacosm while the Lord of Hell created an era that belonged to Hell in the Hell world? The providence of the 2 great emperors was separate and distinct from one another. The martial Dao Prime Body did not continue asking about the Great Emperor. In the Hell world, Tang Kong and the others could not even come into contact with the Emperor realm, let alone the power and secrets of a great emperor. Apart from becoming a great emperor, Is there no other way to leave the hell world? The martial Dao Prime Body asked. According to Tang Kong, wouldn't he be trapped in the hell world forever? In reality, Tang Kong's reply earlier on was merely a tactful reply to a question he had no answer to. However, when he saw that the martial Dao Prime Body had yet to give up, he consoled, perhaps there will be some clues in the number 1 hell, Torment Springs Hell. He was just saying it casually. He had never thought of leaving the hell world. How would he know if there were any clues in Torment Springs Hell? However, Torment Springs Hell was ranked number 1 among the 9 hells and was located in the center of the hell world with a special status. That was why he said that. Of course, Tang Kong wanted the martial Dao Prime Body to back off in the face of difficulties as well. Unexpectedly, the martial Dao Prime Body was interested in Torment Springs Hell and said immediately, "Where is it? Bring me there." As he said that, the martial Dao Prime Master arrived beside Tang Kong and tore through the void casually, prepared to teleport Tang Kong away from this place. The locations of the 9 hells were unknown to the martial Dao Prime Body. If he teleported blindly, who knew how long it would take for him to find Torment Springs Hell? Lord, don't be hasty. When Tang Kong saw that the martial Dao Prime Body was about to leave with him, he was shocked and dissuaded hurriedly. If you want to head to Torment Springs Hell, you can't teleport casually. Otherwise your life will be in danger. Why do you say that? The martial Dao Prime Body frowned. Tang Kong explained, the hell world was once severely injured. The world was shattered, the great Dao was damaged and the laws were incomplete. The void between the 9 hells was already shattered and countless cracks existed. In the process of spatial teleportation, once one enters these spatial cracks by mistake, they will be torn to pieces by a terrifying power. Even for Hell Kings, their cultivation won't be enough to defend against it. The martial Dao Prime Body asked, then how do we head to Torment Springs Hell? Tang Kong hesitated and pondered for a moment before saying slowly, there's a spatial teleportation passageway between the 9 hells that's relatively intact. If you want to head to Torment Springs Hell, you can only use the teleportation formation of the central capital. However, Tang Kong wanted to say something but hesitated. The martial Dao Prime Body did not seem to think too much about it. He nodded and said, let's go to the central capital then. Lord. Tang Kong could not help but remind, Hell Lord Frost Springs presides over the central capital. The meaning behind Tang Kong's words was obvious. When the news of the battle in the North Ridge spread to the central capital, Hell Lord Frost Springs would definitely not let the martial Dao Prime Body off in his wrath. Before the news spread, instead of hiding, Desolate Marshal actually wanted to run to the central capital and send himself to death's door. They would probably be killed by Hell Lord Frost Springs before they could see the teleportation formation. Just as Tang Kong's imagination was running wild, the martial Dao Prime Body said indifferently, that's even better. Since he wants to look for me, why don't I go to the central capital to look for him first and save myself some trouble? Tang Kong was stunned. Against Hell Lord Frost Springs' subsequent wrath and pursuit, Desolate Marshal had no intention of escaping and hiding. Instead, he wanted to take the initiative to look for Hell Lord Frost Springs. This young man was way too impetuous after all. Tang Kong resisted the urge to reprimand the martial Dao Prime Body and said earnestly, Lord, this is not the heavenly world. This is Frost Springs Hell of the Hell world. The central capital of Frost Springs Hell is far stronger than the North Ridge. Lord, don't act on impulse. In my opinion, we still have to consider this matter at length. It's too troublesome. The martial Dao Prime Body waved it off impatiently. Follow me to the central capital. It's best if Hell Lord Frost Springs gives up the teleportation formation. If not, I'll just kill him. Tang Kong presided over the North Ridge for more than 100,000 years and had seen countless storms and heard innumerable bold claims. Even so, he was stunned by the words of the martial Dao Prime Body and his scalp tingled. This was the first time he had heard of someone threatening to kill Hell Lord Frost Springs in his entire life. Furthermore, the martial Dao Prime Body's tone made it sound as though he could kill Hell Lord Frost Springs as though he was killing an ant. Lord, do you want to wait for me to recuperate for a while first? Tang Kong knew that he could change the decision any longer. Right now I'm severely injured. Even if I arrive at the central capital, I won't be able to unleash much combat strength and be of much help, Lord. You don't have to do anything. The martial Dao Prime Body said indifferently, just lead the way. Tang Kong clenched his fists tightly. A moment later he let go weakly. Chapter 2660 Consort Inauguration Ceremony. 2660 Consort Inauguration Ceremony. When Tang Kong saw that he could not avoid it, he said, "Lord Desolate Marshal, wait a moment. I'll go over and make arrangements for my clansmen." The Martial Dao Prime Body nodded. Tang Kong went to the side and gathered many clansmen of the Tang family. He divided them into a few groups and set them off to leave the North Ridge as soon as possible. He realized that he would most likely not be able to return from the central capital this time round and could only try his best to preserve the bloodline of his clansmen. "Father, where are you going?" Tang Qinger asked. Tang Kong sighed internally and did not hide anything. "Lord Desolate Marshal needs someone to lead the way to the central capital. I can only accompany him." "I'll go too." Tang Qinger's eyes lit up. "Nonsense. What are you going for?" Tang Kong glared at Tang Qinger. Tang Qinger glanced at the Martial Dao Prime Body. "I cultivated in the central capital all year round and know it better. I'll definitely be able to help if I tag along." Tang Kong frowned. "Lord Desolate Marshal wants to go to the central capital and use the teleportation formation to leave Frost Springs Hell. The teleportation formation is in the Emperor Palace of Frost Springs City and there are countless experts guarding it. How can you help?" Tang Qinger said, "I've been to the Emperor Palace in the central capital a few times and I have some impression of the terrain inside. If we want to use the teleportation formation of Frost Springs Hell, we can't barge in by force. We have to plan carefully and find a suitable opportunity." Tang Kong pondered for a moment. "All right, you can tag along." Tang Kong brought Tang Qinger to the side of the Martial Dao Prime Body and explained, "Qinger is more familiar with the central capital. It'll be more convenient for us with her around." The Martial Dao Prime Body did not care about that at all. It did not matter if Tang Qinger was around or not. In reality, his essence Martial Grotto-heaven had just devoured too much Grotto-heaven power and needed a relatively long time to digest and absorb it. However, as Tang Kong had said, the news of the battle at the North Ridge would spread to the central capital soon. At that time, Hell Lord Frost Springs would lead his Hell army over and he would not have much time to cultivate in seclusion. Instead of waiting for Hell Lord Frost Springs to attack, it was better for him to take the initiative to head to the central capital to resolve this matter and take drastic measures to settle it once and for all. The Martial Dao Prime Body might not be a match for Hell Lord Frost Springs given his current combat strength. However, he had the Hell Suppression Tripod, Netherworld Treasure Mirror and Soul Lantern. Any one of them was enough to change the situation. The Martial Dao Prime Body tore through the void casually and brought Tang Kong and Tang Qinger into the spatial tunnel, disappearing from the skies above the ruins of the North Ridge. When the many clansmen of the Tang family saw the three of them leave, they obeyed the orders of their leader, Tang Kong, and split into a few teams to leave the North Ridge rapidly. In North Ridge City, many living beings of hell were stunned on the spot when they saw that. However, they maintained their kneeling postures and did not react immediately. "He's leaving just like that? Where is the new King North Ridge going? Isn't it obvious? He's definitely fleeing the North Ridge to find a place to hide and lie low." "That's right. The news of today's battle will spread to the central capital very quickly. He won't be able to retain his position as King North Ridge stably and will be mercilessly killed by Hell Lord Frost Springs." "That's right. The clansmen of the Tang family of the North Ridge fled earlier on as well. They're probably looking for a place to hide." When they heard the discussions around them, many living beings of hell came to a realization and stood up one after another. Thousands of Hell King experts stood up with conflicted expressions. Although they survived, their vitality was severely injured. In fact, some Hell King experts' Grotto-heavens were completely devoured by the Martial Dao Prime Body and their hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation were snatched away. However, compared to Ming Feng and the others and the territorial lords of the 10 Great Hell Ridges, they were considered lucky to have survived. "Let's disperse." A Hell King sighed. In the next 2 days, Nether King experts will probably descend from the central capital and take over the North Ridge. As for whether that purple-robed man and the Tang family of the North Ridge can survive, it will depend on their fate. Thousands of Hell Kings left and returned to their territories. As they recuperated in seclusion, they waited for news from the central capital. In the spatial tunnel, the Martial Dao Prime Body led Tang Kong and his daughter through. Before long, Tang Kong's expression changed as he pointed at a spatial node. If you exit from here, we'll reach Frost Springs City in the central capital. The martial Dao Prime body broke through the spatial node with Tang Kong and his daughter without hesitation and exited the spatial tunnel. The location where the three of them descended was not far from Frost Springs City. What entered his line of sight was a majestic and gigantic ancient city that was snow-white in color, as though it was made of ice. It was extremely conspicuous in the dark and sinister world. The snow-white city wall extended continuously along the horizon. Even with the eyesight of the martial Dao Prime body, he could not see the end of the city wall. The entire ancient city was emitting cold air and white fog. This was Frost Springs City of the central capital. The martial Dao Prime body had just seen North Ridge City. However, it was much inferior in terms of aura and scale compared to the ancient city before him. At that moment, the martial Dao Prime body and the other two tore through the void and suddenly appeared outside Frost Springs Hell. Although some living beings of Hell who came and went noticed them, they were not too surprised. Frost Springs City was the center of the entire Frost Springs Hell. It was not surprising for them to bump into Hell King experts around the ancient city. Many guards stood at the entrance of the ancient city and checked the living beings of Hell who passed by. Tang Qinger said, "Hell King experts don't have to care about them. They can fly in the air in the ancient city and don't have to be interrogated by the guards." Just as the martial Dao Prime body was about to enter the city, Tang Kong suddenly said, "Lord, wait. Your clothes and appearance are a little special and are easy to recognize. Should we disguise ourselves?" Once the news of the battle in the North Ridge spread to the central capital, the purple robe and silver mask of the martial Dao Prime body would be easily discovered. "There's no need," the martial Dao Prime body said indifferently. Tang Kong sighed internally and did not dare to say anything else. He could only follow obediently behind the martial Dao Prime body and enter Frost Springs City. Frost Springs City was huge, but most of the living beings of Hell were squeezed on the ground. The space in midair was relatively spacious and there were not many obstacles. Strange. Looking at the crowd below, Tang Qinger frowned slightly. There are usually not so many people in Frost Springs City. Along the way, the three of them encountered many Hell King experts in midair. Tang Kong observed for a moment. Is there something important in Frost Springs City? Tang Qinger thought for a moment and said with a look of realization, "I remember now. Based on the date, Hell Lord Frost Springs Consort Inauguration Ceremony should be held in the Emperor Palace today." Consort Inauguration Ceremony? Tang Kong asked. Tang Qinger explained, "A few years ago, a beautiful woman was born in the ancient Nether race. Hell Lord Frost Springs was shocked when he saw her and decided to abolish the original Hell Consort and make her the new Hell Consort. Hell Lord Frost Springs even used a Dharmic Dao to manifest the woman's image above Frost Springs City for 3 days without dissipating, allowing the living beings in Frost Springs prison to have a chance to see her face." Tang Kong sneered. That action was nothing more than to satisfy Hell Lord Frost Springs' vanity and let the living beings of Frost Springs Hell see how beautiful his consort was. Chapter 2661 Chants. 2661 Chants. Tang Qinger said, "As far as I know, Hell Lord Frost Springs specially held the consort inauguration ceremony for this woman." Tang Kong disagreed. "Hell Lord Frost Springs must have been bewitched as well. It's just a woman, how beautiful can she be such that so many people must be mobilized?" Hearing this, Tang Qinger's expression turned complicated and she fell silent. A moment later she said, "The beauty of this Hell Consort can indeed be said to be devastatingly alluring and astounding. If I were a man, I would probably be charmed by her as well and might even give up everything for her." This evaluation was too high. If it was said by someone else, Tang Kong would still have some doubts. However, Tang Qinger was his daughter. Furthermore, Tang Qinger was a top-tier beauty to begin with. In this aspect, she would definitely be able to compare properly. However, even Tang Qinger had to admit that she was inferior to this Hell Consort. Tang Qinger continued, "I heard that when this Hell Consort was born from Hell Frost Springs, the centaureas growing beside the spring avoided her and closed up, feeling ashamed of their inferiority. That's pretty exaggerated." Tang Kong was surprised. He had lived to 800,000 years old and was already calm in this aspect. When he heard the various legends about this Hell Consort, he felt curious as well. Tang Qinger nodded. It's said that Hell Lord Frost Springs treats her very well and has been pursuing her for thousands of years. This Hell Consort has never been willing and Hell Lord Frost Springs has never crossed the line as well. It's just that for some unknown reason, some time ago, Hell Lord Frost Springs suddenly announced that he was going to take in a consort. Perhaps this Hell Consort was finally touched by his sincerity. Tang Qinger shifted her gaze to the Martial Dao Prime Body. The Martial Dao Prime Body remained silent the entire time and looked into the distance. It was unknown what he was thinking, as though he had something on his mind. The Martial Dao Prime Body could not help but think of an old friend when he heard the words, Hell Consort, and Tang Qinger's conversation. This old friend had some unforgettable past with him in Tianhuang mainland. This old friend had even saved his life before. Consort Yu of the Great Qian Empire. Of course, the Martial Dao Prime Body knew that the Hell Consort Tang Qinger was referring to was a Hell Consort and could not be the same as Consort Yu. However, the two of them sounded the same and were peerless beauties. As such, he could not help but think of this old friend in the past. Back then, Consort Yu had also undergone tribulation transcendence and ascended in Tianhuang mainland. Although the Martial Dao Prime Body did not appear, he paid attention to the entire tribulation transcendence process. Fortunately, there was no danger. All these years, the Martial Dao Prime Body had only found Yan Beichen, Ming Zhen, Demoness Ji and Tao Yao among the old friends from Tianhuang mainland who had ascended. There was no news of the others. Lord Desolate Marshal? Tang Kong asked softly at the side. It's not too late to leave now. The news of the battle at the North Ridge shouldn't have spread to the central capital yet. When Tang Kong saw that the Martial Dao Prime Body was silent, he thought that the latter was feeling regret after seeing Frost Springs City's foundation. Let's go to the Frost Springs Emperor Palace. The Martial Dao Prime Body put aside some of his past worries for the time being and said. Although there had not been an Emperor Realm expert in Frost Springs Hell for many years, Hell Lord Frost Springs Palace still retained its previous title as the Emperor Palace. We're still going? Tang Kong felt helpless and complained internally. Tang Qinger's heart skipped a beat as she suddenly said, Father, Senior Desolate Marshal, this consort inauguration ceremony might be a rare opportunity for us. Tang Kong's eyes lit up and he understood immediately. The consort inauguration ceremony this time round was massive. Any expert with some status and reputation in Frost Springs City would head to the Frost Springs Emperor Palace to watch the ceremony. As for the guards of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace, they would also focus their attention on the consort inauguration ceremony. That way, the forces guarding the teleportation formation would definitely slacken and increase their chances of success. Tang Qinger continued, however, the teleportation formation is located in the core area of the Emperor Palace and won't be too far away from the consort inauguration ceremony. If we get the chance, we have to act quickly and activate the teleportation formation immediately to leave Frost Springs Hell without any delay. By the time the experts of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace react, we'll definitely die. Tang Kong nodded and a trace of hope reignited in his eyes. No matter what, Tang Qinger's plan was much safer than breaking into the Emperor Palace head-on. If their operation went smoothly, the three of them would indeed have a chance of survival. Lord Desolate Marshal, what do you think? Tang Kong turned around and asked. We'll see. The Martial Dao Prime Body replied casually and continued in the direction of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace. The three of them advanced and arrived at the Frost Springs Emperor Palace before long. In other areas of Frost Springs City, one could fly in the air. However, in the Frost Springs Emperor Palace, apart from Hell Lord Frost Springs, all other living beings had to descend on the ground. Looking at the entrance of the Emperor Palace before him, Tang Kong took a deep breath. Lord Desolate Marshal, if you enter the Frost Springs Emperor Palace, there's no way out. You. Before he could finish, the Martial Dao Prime Body was the first to enter the Emperor Palace. Tang Kong was helpless and could only brace himself to follow. The Martial Dao Prime Body was his savior. If not for the Martial Dao Prime Body, the Tang family of the North Ridge, including him, would have been wiped out. Even if there was a mountain of blades, a sea of flames and a bottomless abyss ahead, he had to follow the Martial Dao Prime Body in. Not long after they entered the Emperor Palace, a shout suddenly sounded from behind. Brother Tang. When he heard that voice, Tang Kong's heart skipped a beat and he cursed internally. He could only stop and turn around. Not far away, hundreds of Hell King experts were walking over. The leader had a terrifying aura and a dignified expression. His gaze was like a torch and his facial features looked similar to the dead young master of the South Forest. Tang Qing'er's expression changed when she saw who it was. When Tang Kong turned around, his expression had already returned to normal. He welcomed the person with a smile and cupped his fists. "Brother Shintu, how have you been?" This group of people was from the South Forest. The leader was King South Forest, Shintalang. Shintalang approached. "Brother Tang, today was your 800,000-year-old birthday banquet. If not for Hell Lord Frost Spring's Consort Inauguration ceremony, I would have definitely gone to wish you a happy birthday personally." "It's fine." Tang Kong had a calm expression as he waved his hand. "Compared to the Hell Lord's Consort Inauguration ceremony, my birthday banquet is nothing." Shintalang smiled. "Initially, I thought that you would be focused on holding your birthday banquet in the North Ridge. To think that you would rush over to participate in the Hell Lord's Consort Inauguration ceremony as well. By the way, Inger should have already arrived at the North Ridge. Why didn't he come with the two of you?" At the mention of Shintu Ing, Tang Qing'er's expression changed slightly and she felt guilty. She avoided Shintalang's gaze, not daring to look at him. Shintu Ing had already been killed by the martial Dao Prime body and his essence spirit was destroyed. How could he have followed them over? Tang Kong said, "Your son is indeed a fine young man." However, there was a small conflict between these two children. He's with Hell King South Essence and did not join us. At that moment, Tang Kong's experience and maturity was evident. Against Shintalang's question, Tang Kong had a calm expression and did not react at all, as though he did not know that Shintuing had died. Even his lie was flawless, as though he had prepared it long ago. Not only that, Tang Kong's words even helped Tang Qing'er make up for the flaw that she had just revealed. Chapter 2662 Consort Yu? 2662 Consort Yu. Shintalang naturally noticed Tang Qing'er's abnormality and the panic that flashed across her face. Initially he was speculating internally. However, when he heard Tang Kong's explanation, he came to a realization and did not think too much about it. Small conflicts between young people can easily be resolved. This is. Shintalang's gaze shifted to the martial Dao Prime body. After the essence martial Grotto-heaven devoured a large amount of the Grotto-heaven power of the Hell Kings in the North Ridge, it no longer possessed the same type of living aura of those from the medium Kiliacosm. However, the martial Dao Prime body looked a little strange. He wore a silver mask and only revealed a pair of deep eyes, looking rather mysterious. "This is a fellow Taoist I just met," Tang Kong said ambiguously before changing the topic and exchanging pleasantries indifferently. A moment later, Shintalang said, "The consort inauguration ceremony should be starting soon. Let's enter the palace together." "Brother Shintu, please go ahead. I have something else to do and will have to wait for a while." Tang Kong wanted to take advantage of the consort inauguration ceremony to infiltrate the teleportation formation. Naturally, he could not enter the palace with Shintalang. "All right, see you at the consort inauguration ceremony." With that said, Shintalang led the group of Hell King experts from the South Forest towards the main hall of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace. After Shintalang left, Tang Qing'er heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier on, in front of Shintalang, she almost could not withstand the pressure and panicked. If Shintalang noticed anything amiss, the three of them could forget about approaching the teleportation formation successfully. "Lord Desolate Marshal, let's go over as well." Tang Kong probed. "This way." Tang Qing'er pointed in a direction. "We can avoid many people on the road here in case we bump into any familiar faces." The martial Dao Prime body did not mind and merely followed beside Tang Kong and his daughter. Before long, the three of them arrived near the main hall of the Emperor Palace. If they wanted to reach the teleportation formation, they had to pass through a huge square in front of the Emperor Palace's main hall. At that moment, the square was already filled with people. At a glance, it was densely packed and bustling. The consort inauguration ceremony this time round was grand. Not only were many experts from the central capital present, many experts from the East Plains, South Forest and West Swamp arrived as well. Tang Kong stood at the periphery of the square and swept his gaze, spotting three territorial lords of the East Plains, South Forest and West Swamp in the crowd. Apart from some guards and maidservants, there was no one else in the main hall. Hell Lord Frost Springs and the new Hell Consort had yet to arrive. Tang Kong had a grim expression. His birthday banquet in the North Ridge was completely insignificant compared to the consort inauguration ceremony before him. There were only a few thousand Hell King experts at his birthday banquet in the North Ridge. At this moment, there were probably tens of thousands of Hell King experts gathered in the square, emitting a terrifying aura as they intertwined in the air. Any living being of Hell who stepped into the square could sense that immense pressure. If the news of the battle at the North Ridge spread to the central capital and the Emperor Palace, their tracks would be exposed as well. At that time, they would be drowned and torn into pieces by the crowd before them. Right then, a gigantic carriage drove over slowly in midair in the distance. In front of the carriage, 9 serpent worms pulled and hissed continuously into the skies. Their cultivation auras had already reached the level of Hell Kings. 2 figures, a man and a woman, sat in the carriage. The man was dressed in snow-white armor and a thick and heavy sword stood by his feet, emitting a chill. He had a cold expression and a pale face. His eyes were azure like gems and there was a strange rune imprinted on his glabella. It was the word Nether. Hell Lord Frost Springs had descended. Although the martial Tao Prime body had never seen Hell Lord Frost Springs before, apart from this person, no one else could emit such a powerful might. The gaze of the martial Tao Prime body shifted to the face of the woman beside Hell Lord Frost Springs. The martial Tao Prime body narrowed his eyes slightly and his expression changed beneath the Mara mask. If he was not wrong, this woman should be Hell Lord Frost Springs' soon-to-be Hell Consort. Indeed, this Hell Consort was extremely beautiful. Anyone who saw this woman would sigh at the wonders of creation in the world. Many living beings in the square, regardless of gender or cultivation, held their breaths instinctively when they saw the Hell Consort and could not shift their gazes away for a moment. However, that was not enough to tempt the martial Tao Prime body. To his surprise, this Hell Consort was almost identical to Consort Yu of Tianhuang mainland in terms of looks and figure. The only difference was that there was a strange nether rune imprinted on the forehead of the Hell Consort. How could this be? Instantly, many questions flashed through the mind of the martial Tao Prime body. Could this Hell Consort and Consort Yu of Tianhuang mainland be the same person? If they were not the same person, why did they look identical? Even their auras were almost identical. However, if they were the same person, what could explain the scene before him? In Tianhuang mainland, he had personally witnessed Consort Yu undergo tribulation transcendence and ascend. Why would Consort Hell come to the Hell world? What exactly did she experience after she ascended that caused her to be transformed in the Hell Frost Springs and become a member of the ancient Nether race? Or perhaps, could living beings from minor kiliacosms ascend directly into the Hell world? But how was that possible? Even between the medium kiliacosm and the Hell world, there was an indestructible barrier. How could the living beings of the minor kiliacosm ascend directly into the Hell world? Countless questions lingered in the heart of the martial Tao Prime body. More importantly, even if the person before him was Consort Yu of Tianhuang mainland, did she still have her past memories after undergoing the transformation of the Hell Frost Springs? Tang Qinger was a woman after all and had seen the Hell Consort before, so she was the first to come back to her senses. She glanced sideways and saw the martial Tao Prime body staring fixedly at the Hell Consort with a strange gaze. She could not help but purse her lips and mutter softly, "Seems like you're not immune either." Tang Kong had a conflicted expression and wanted to say something but hesitated. There's actually such a woman in the world. Seriously? If he could be hundreds of thousands of years younger, he would even fight Hell Lord Frost Springs to the death for this Hell Consort. Stop looking, the two of you. Tang Qinger sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness. This is the best opportunity. Everyone in the square is focused on the Hell Consort. We can leave this place now. Tang Kong's heart skipped a beat as though he had woken up from a dream. That's right. Lord Desolate Marshal, let's take this opportunity to leave this place quickly. There's a high chance of success if we head to the teleportation formation now. The martial Tao Prime body remained silent, as though he did not hear anything. He continued to look at Hell Consort in the carriage. Tang Kong and his daughter exchanged glances with helpless expressions. The two of them thought that the martial Tao Prime body was already obsessed with the beauty of the Hell Consort and could not extricate himself. Tang Kong was anxious and urged, "Lord Desolate Marshal, are you still leaving? This is a rare opportunity and if we miss it, something else might happen." "I'm not leaving," the martial Tao Prime body said indifferently. In a flash, he arrived in midair and headed towards the carriage at the front of the square. No matter who this hell consort was, he had to get to the bottom of it. Chapter 2663. He's here. 2663. He's here. What was he trying to do? Tang Kong was shocked. The three of them hid at the back of the crowd and would not be noticed for the time being. Now that the martial Dao prime body had soared into the air, his tracks would definitely be exposed. Sigh. Tang Kong struggled internally and resisted the urge to turn around and escape, sighing helplessly. Tang Qinger was confused as well, not understanding the intentions of the martial Dao prime body. In the square, many heroes were gathered and the tens of thousands of Hell King experts could only stand on the ground. By flying through the air above the heads of the Hell King experts, the martial Dao prime body instantly attracted gazes and hostility. Reporting in. Right then, a group of Emperor Palace guards sped over with anxious expressions, as though something major had happened. The group of guards sped through midair and crossed the square. Right now, it was the consort inauguration ceremony and the appearance of the Emperor Palace guards was way too sudden, attracting the attention of many experts in the square. Hell Lord Frost Spring's carriage had just descended in the hall and the Emperor Palace guards were about to arrive as well. What is it? Hell Lord Frost Springs did not stand up and asked indifferently. A commander of the Emperor Palace said in a deep voice, Hell Lord, Ming Feng and more than 10 Nether Kings have all died in the North Ridge. King North Ridge has colluded with an outsider from the medium Kiliacosm and has already defected. His whereabouts are unknown. Hell Lord Frost Springs narrowed his eyes slightly. Once the news was out, a commotion broke out in the square as well. What's going on? A living being from the medium Kiliacosm has descended? King North Ridge truly has a death wish. How dare he betray Frost Springs Hell? The clamor in the square grew louder. Tang Kong, who was hiding at the back, was uneasy and felt an unprecedented pressure. The expression of the King South Forest, Shintalang, changed slightly. King North Ridge defected. He had just bumped into Tang Kong in the Emperor Palace. What was going on? Right then, another figure sped over. It was Hell King South Essence. Hell King bad news? Hell King South Essence rushed in front of Shintalang and knelt down, saying tragically, King North Ridge betrayed us and the young master was killed tragically. What? Shintuing was enraged and his gaze was sharp. He reacted quickly and said to Hell Lord Frost Springs in a deep voice, Hell Lord, I just saw King North Ridge at the entrance of the Emperor Palace. I'm guessing that Tang Kong, that traitor, wants to take advantage of the consort inauguration ceremony to escape using the teleportation formation of Frost Springs Hell. Hell Lord, please handle this quickly or it'll be too late. Hell Lord Frost Springs had a calm expression as he said unhurriedly, the teleportation formation is heavily guarded. Without my orders no one can approach. Tang Kong sighed internally when he heard that. From the looks of it, even if the situation before them had not developed to such an extent, it was unlikely that they would have been able to leave Frost Springs Hell even if they managed to arrive at the teleportation formation. Hell Lord Frost Springs was extremely calm. He looked at the commander of the Emperor Palace ahead and asked, given Tang Kong's combat strength, how could he have killed Ming Feng and the others? It wasn't Tang Kong. Hell King South Essence replied first, I was there at that time. Tang Kong was already severely injured by Lord Ming Feng. It was that cultivator from the medium Kiliacosm who attacked and killed Lord Ming Feng and the others. Oh. Hell Lord Frost Springs raised his brow slightly. To be able to kill Ming Feng and more than 10 other Nether Kings, this person is rather capable. Did he condense a perfected Grotto-heaven? At the mention of that, Hell King South Essence had a strange expression as he shook his head. It's not a perfected Grotto-heaven. It should be a minor Grotto-heaven. However, it can continuously devour the power of other Grotto-heavens. Back then, thousands of Hell King experts attacked but they could not defend against the devouring of his dark Grotto-heaven. Impossible. Hell Lord Frost Springs said resolutely, how can someone with a minor Grotto-heaven kill Nether Kings of our ancient Nether race? The commander of the Emperor Palace said in a deep voice, Hell Lord, I'm willing to lead the Imperial Army in the palace to conquer the North Ridge and search for Tang Kong and the other traitors. I'll kill the outsider. There's no hurry. Hell Lord Frost Springs waved it off. A few rotten fish and shrimps won't be able to escape from me. I'll handle this matter personally after the consort inauguration ceremony today. What characteristics does that outsider have? Get someone to draw it and hunt him down in the entire hell. Hell King South Essence said, that person is very easy to recognize. He's wearing a purple robe and a silver mask. I think he's Desolate Marshal or something. Upon hearing that word, a ripple appeared in the eyes of the Hell Consort, who was initially motionless and expressionless in the carriage. Purple robe and silver mask. Many Hell King experts shifted their gazes and looked at the cultivator who was flying in midair instinctively. Hell King South Essence looked over instinctively as well. When he saw the martial Dao Prime body, Hell King South Essence shuddered as though he had seen a ghost. He was so frightened that he almost fell from midair with endless fear in his eyes. Gee, he's here. Hell King South Essence pointed at the martial Dao Prime body who was striding over with a trembling voice. Hell Lord Frost Spring's gaze landed on the martial Dao Prime body as well, with a playful glint in his eyes. Were you the one who killed Inger? Shintalang stood up slowly and stood in front of the martial Dao Prime body. His gaze was cold as he glared into the eyes of the latter and asked slowly. Lord H, he's the one. Hell King South Essence gulped and said with a trembling voice. I want you to pay with your life for my son. Shintalang roared and his blood chi surged. The void behind him collapsed as he wanted to prop up his major Grotto-heaven and kill the martial Dao Prime body. According to the news just now, Shintalang realized how powerful the martial Dao Prime body was. Therefore he attacked with all his might without holding back. However, the martial Dao Prime body's attack was even faster. Before Shintalang could finish, the martial Dao Prime body had already arrived in front of him. His blood chi surged and he raised his fist with a shocking punch. Instantly the world changed. Before Shintalang's blood chi could circulate, it was completely suppressed by the blood chi of the martial Dao Prime body. Before the Grotto-heaven behind him could hold on, it was shattered by a single punch from the martial Dao Prime body. Bang! Right in front of everyone, Shintalang was blasted apart by a single punch from the martial Dao Prime body and turned into a blood mist that filled the air. King South Forest was beaten until his essence spirit was destroyed without a corpse left. If Shintalang released his bloodline phenomenon in Grotto-heaven completely, he might be able to defend against the punch of the martial Dao Prime body. Unfortunately, he spent too much time talking. The martial Dao Prime body did not say a word and punched forward, blowing him up. The entire square fell silent instantly. Many living beings of Hell and Hell King experts widened their eyes in disbelief. In the Frost Springs Emperor Palace, in front of Hell Lord Frost Springs and surrounded by tens of thousands of Hell King experts, the purple-robed man actually dared to kill in public. Furthermore, he killed King South Forest with a single punch. Tang Kong and his daughter had long seen the methods of the martial Dao Prime body. However, they were still shocked when they saw that this person from the medium Kiliacosm was even more domineering than the living beings of Hell. No matter who they were or what their statuses were, as long as they provoked him, he would smash them without hesitation. Chapter 2664 Fighting the Hell Lord. 2664 Fighting the Hell Lord. How dare you? The Emperor Palace commander in the hall had a furious expression and hollered, How dare you kill someone in the Frost Springs Emperor Palace? Right then, Hell Lord Frost Springs glared and raised his hand slightly to stop the Emperor Palace commander. Hell Lord Frost Springs did not want to kill the martial Dao Prime body casually. In his eyes, the martial Dao Prime body was a gigantic treasure. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for living beings of the medium Kiliacosm to come to the Hell world. For the purple-robed man to be able to come here, there must be something special about him. The Hell world had fallen into the Dharma ending era and had not produced an Emperor Realm expert for many years. Hell Lord Frost Springs vaguely sensed an opportunity from the martial Dao Prime body. Perhaps he could find a dermic formulation to advance to the Emperor Realm from the purple-robed man. If he could step into the Emperor Realm and become the only Emperor expert of the Hell world, he would become the Lord of Hell revered by the 9 Hells and rule over the Hell world. Without Hell Lord Frost Springs' orders, it was not appropriate for the others to attack. Right in front of everyone, the martial Dao Prime body arrived before the 9 WRMS carriage successfully. You're from the medium Kiliacosm? Hell Lord Frost Springs glared at the martial Tao Prime body and leaned on the cold gigantic sword by his feet as he asked slowly. The martial Tao Prime body did not even look at Hell Lord Frost Springs. He merely looked at the beautiful woman in the carriage and asked softly, "True Jade?" Consort Yu's name in Tianhuang mainland was True Jade. However, very few people knew about it. Furthermore, this time round, the martial Tao Prime body did not hide his voice. When she heard that name, a hint of fluctuation flashed through the woman's eyes. She looked at the martial Tao Prime body with a bewildered expression. The voice sounded familiar. However, she was not sure and could not believe it. The woman remained motionless and silent. "You two know each other?" Hell Lord Frost Springs frowned. The martial Tao Prime body ignored him and removed the Mara mask, revealing a refined face. The woman's eyes widened in surprise and disbelief. However, although she tried her best to open her mouth, she could not make a sound. When he saw the woman's reaction, the martial Tao Prime body no longer had any doubts. The woman before him was Consort Yu. It was not that Consort Yu was unwilling to speak, but she was bound by some sort of restriction and could not move or even make a sound. The martial Tao Prime body had too many questions about Consort Yu. However, now was not the time to ask. The martial Tao Prime body had a cold expression as he put on the Mara mask once more. His gaze shifted and he finally looked at Hell Lord Frost Springs at the side. "Your consort inauguration ceremony is to place all sorts of restrictions on her and prevent her from resisting." The martial Tao Prime body asked indifferently with a calm tone. The martial Tao Prime body had ignored Hell Lord Frost Springs twice previously. The latter did not seem to be angry and merely had a sinister smile on his face. "So what if it is?" Hell Lord Frost Springs raised his brow slightly with a mocking expression and asked, "Could it be that you want to uphold justice for her? Or do you want to challenge me?" "Ha ha ha ha. Take a look. This cultivator from the medium Kiliacosm has come to our Frost Springs hell to fight for injustice." "What do you mean by fighting for injustice?" "I think he's just bewitched by the Hell Consort and lost his mind. He actually went to make a fuss right in front of the Hell Lord." Laughter sounded from the square. "Well done." The martial Tao Prime body nodded. "Since you admit it, I'll beat you to death." Before his sentence was finished, the martial Tao Prime body strode forward and an ancient bronze square tripod suddenly flew out from his glabella. It expanded instantly and landed in his palm. Emperor Weapon, the Hell Suppression Tripod. The martial Tao Prime body raised the Hell Suppression Tripod and smashed it towards the top of Hell Lord Frost Springs' head. This time round, the martial Tao Prime body did not release the essence martial Grotto-heaven. Hell Lord Frost Springs Grotto-heaven had already been cultivated to the perfected realm and his essence martial Grotto-heaven might not be able to defend against it. Under normal circumstances, the martial Tao Prime body rarely used weapons to kill. But now, the reason why he summoned the Emperor Weapon, the Hell Suppression Tripod, was to kill Hell Lord Frost Springs right away. After getting rid of Hell Lord Frost Springs, the greatest threat, although there were still tens of thousands of Hell King experts around, they would be scattered in a mess and were nothing to be afraid of. "How dare you!" Hell Lord Frost Springs was enraged. Ever since he became Hell Lord Frost Springs and ruled over a hell, it had been many years since anyone dared to use weapons in front of him. But now, even with tens of thousands of Hell King experts below, an outsider from the medium Kiliacosm actually dared to attack him. Hell Lord Frost Springs' reaction was extremely fast as well. The moment the martial Tao Prime body charged forward, he raised his Frost Springs Hell Sword in his hand and slashed towards the Hell Suppression Tripod. "Break!" Hell Lord Frost Springs hollered. The Frost Springs Hell Sword was nourished and tempered in the Hell Frost Springs all year round and nurtured the powerful power of the Hell Frost Springs with a bone-chilling chill. Grotto-heaven spirit treasures of the same cultivation realm could not defend against the sharpness of his Frost Springs Hell Sword. For example, a Grotto-heaven spirit treasure nurtured by a minor Grotto-heaven could not even defend against the might of his single strike. The martial Tao Prime body indeed merely possessed a minor Grotto-heaven. However, the Hell Suppression Tripod was not a spirit treasure nurtured by a minor Grotto-heaven. It was a great Emperor Weapon of the ancient era. Clang. The Frost Springs Hell Sword collided with the Hell Suppression Tripod with an ear-piercing sound. Immediately after, a layer of frost covered the Hell Suppression Tripod in the blink of an eye and froze, as though it had turned into an ice sculpture. "Ha ha ha ha." Hell Lord Frost Springs burst into laughter. How dare you show off this lousy metal before me? The martial Tao Prime body had a calm expression as he channeled his spirit consciousness to awaken the sacred souls in the hell suppression tripod. Gore. Roar. Shriek. Hiss. Suddenly, 4 earth-shaking howls sounded from the hell suppression tripod. Immediately after, the surface of the hell suppression tripod shone with a blinding light. On the walls of the tripod, 4 terrifying beasts came to life and broke through the ice. Hell Lord Frost Springs was alarmed. The auras of the 4 sacred beasts were extremely powerful. The powerful might emitted by the sacred beasts descended on the hall and suppressed the 9 serpent Worms in front of the carriage to the point of not daring to move. The 4 sacred beasts awakened at the same time and charged towards Hell Lord Frost Springs. Boom, boom, boom. Against the impact of the 4 sacred beasts, the gigantic carriage collapsed as well. The restrictions on the carriage dissipated silently and Consort Yu regained her freedom. The martial Tao Prime body waved his robes and brought Consort Yu out of the carriage, placing her behind him. At that moment, the 4 sacred beasts had already charged towards Hell Lord Frost Springs. The azure dragon circled, the white tiger roared, the vermilion bird bathed in flames and the black tortoise stepped on the waves. As the cultivation realm of the martial Tao Prime body rose, the hell suppression tripod strength rose rapidly under the nourishment of his minor Grotto-heaven. After the baptism of the 10 heavenly tribulations, the souls of the 4 sacred beasts underwent a rebirth and a transformation, becoming even stronger than they were during the infinite era. Right now, the power of the 4 sacred souls had already reached the Grotto-heaven realm. Against the attacks of the 4 sacred souls, Hell Lord Frost Springs could not defend against them and wanted to channel the bloodline of the ancient Nether race. However, the 4 sacred souls emitted the bloodline aura of the 4 sacred beasts as well. Under the suppression of the bloodline auras of the 4 sacred beasts, Hell Lord Frost Springs' ancient Nether bloodline was suppressed and circulated slowly. Chapter 2665 Massacre. 2665 Massacre. Boom. Hell Lord Frost Springs could not release his bloodline phenomenon for the time being and could only prop up his perfected Grotto-heaven first, wanting to devour the 4 sacred souls. Right then, the martial Tao Prime body wielded the hell suppression tripod and smashed it towards Hell Lord Frost Springs' perfected Grotto-heaven like a god. Boom. There was a loud bang. Hell Lord Frost Springs' perfected Grotto-heaven swayed violently and let out a faint cracking sound. The blood chi in the body of the martial Tao Prime body surged and his eyes burned with purple flames. His body seemed to have transformed into a furnace that were filled with raging flames and descended from the skies with a scarlet heat. Boom, boom, boom. The martial Tao Prime body transformed into the heaven and earth furnace and combined it with the hell suppression tripod. He even opened up the essence martial Grotto-heaven and smashed it down one after another without giving Hell Lord Frost Springs any chance to catch his breath. Coupled with the entanglement attacks of the 4 sacred souls, Hell Lord Frost Springs could not even find a chance to leave the battlefield and retreat. The attacks of the martial Tao Prime body were way too ferocious. That attack released almost all of his trump cards. His bloodline phenomenon, the essence martial Grotto-heaven and even the emperor weapon, the hell suppression tripod. There were still tens of thousands of Hell King experts surrounding him. The martial Tao Prime body had to kill Hell Lord Frost Springs immediately and get rid of this greatest threat to stabilize the situation. Crack. Crack. The moment Hell Lord Frost Springs' perfected Grotto-heaven was propped up, it was shattered by a series of attacks from the martial Tao Prime body and exploded on the spot. At that moment, the hell suppression tripod floated above Hell Lord Frost Springs' head and Sanskrit sounded from it incessantly in a divine and vast manner. Beside Hell Lord Frost Springs, the 4 sacred souls could not help but reveal the figures of Buddhas and the cries of dragons and elephants. In the hands of the martial Tao Prime body, the hell suppression tripod finally displayed the power of an emperor weapon and was no longer used for simple attacks such as smashing someone. Hell Lord Frost Springs spat out blood and his face turned even paler. The attacks of the martial Tao Prime body were way too ferocious. Without the protection of his perfected Grotto-heaven, he could not defend against the continuous attacks of the heaven and earth furnace and hell suppression tripod. Right in front of everyone, Hell Lord Frost Springs was surrounded by a blazing furnace and 4 sacred souls. The bronze tripod that shone with a blinding golden light shattered him into pieces. Before Hell Lord Frost Spring's essence spirit could escape, it was devoured by the heaven and earth furnace of the martial Tao prime body and burned to ashes instantly. Hell Lord Frost Springs was dead. The entire process happened too quickly and many Hell Kings were still stunned on the spot. Their eyes widened in shock and disbelief. There were many Hell King experts present, but no one expected Hell Lord Frost Springs to be killed by the martial Tao prime body in a few breaths. Even the guards of the Emperor Palace did not have the time to attack. That was because earlier on, they wanted to attack the martial Tao prime body but were stopped by Hell Lord Frost Springs. Everyone thought that the Hell Lord definitely had other intentions. However, to think that Hell Lord Frost Springs would be dead in the blink of an eye. Well? At the back of the square, Tang Kong muttered when he saw that he actually killed the Hell Lord. The death of Hell Lord Frost Springs was a good thing for him and the Tang family. Because Hell Lord Frost Springs was dead, the entire Frost Springs Hell was without a leader and would definitely fall into chaos as experts fought for the position of the Hell Lord. At that time, no one would mobilize a huge force to hunt him down. He seems to be old friends with the Hell Consort. Because the Hell Lord imprisoned the Hell Consort, in his rage Tang Qing'er's expression was conflicted when she saw that. She was both envious and afraid. It was only now that she realized how terrifying this cultivator from the medium Kiliacosm whom she bumped into unintentionally was. Given the situation, even the entire Frost Springs Hell might not be able to suppress him, let alone the North Ridge. Kill him and take revenge for the Hell Lord. The commander of the Emperor Palace in the lead reacted immediately and waved his arm. At the same time, he took out a communication talisman from his storage bag and released it to gather the Imperial Army of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace. Whoever can kill this person will be the new Hell Lord Frost Springs. Someone shouted from the crowd. That voice seemed to have stirred up 1,000 waves. The Hell King experts in the square glared at the martial Tao prime body in the hall with a murderous aura. Everyone was afraid of Hell Lord Frost Springs and did not dare to disobey. It was not only because Hell Lord Frost Springs was powerful to begin with, but also because there were already a large number of Hell Kings and Nether King experts gathered under him. Furthermore, Hell Lord Frost Springs had the ancient Nether race of Frost Springs Hell backing him. Unless other Nether Kings of the Nether ancient race rose, no one would be able to challenge his status as Hell Lord Frost Springs. The other living beings of Hell had no chance at all. Right now, although the martial Tao prime body had killed Hell Lord Frost Springs, he was alone. There were tens of thousands of Hell King experts present. Thereafter, Nether King experts of the ancient Nether race would arrive and billions of Hell troops would gather. In the eyes of many living beings of Hell, the martial Tao prime body was alone and weak. However, they had the entire Frost Springs Hell. Even though the martial Tao prime body had just displayed his powerful combat strength, many living beings of Hell present were not afraid at all. Instead, they were extremely excited and wanted to take advantage of the chaotic world to rise and take over the Emperor Palace. Kill? Many living beings of Hell shouted from the crowd. Retreat to the hall. The martial Tao prime body sent Consort Yu into the hall behind him. Thereafter, he stood in front of the hall and faced the surging living beings of Hell alone, letting out an earth-shaking roar. Roar! The martial Tao prime body opened his mouth and released his sound domain secret skill. Myriad Beings Sound. Instantly, the figures of billions of living beings seemed to appear behind the martial Tao prime body and shouted together with him in a deafening manner. The myriad beings sound coupled with the blood chi of the martial Tao prime body released incomparable lethality. Poof, poof, poof. Although most of the experts who charged forward were Hell Kings, some of them with weak physiques, ordinary bloodlines and insufficient cultivation realms were shattered on the spot by the impact of the myriad beings' sound and turned into a blood mist, their essence spirits and bodies destroyed. Some Hell King experts could defend against it. However, they were severely injured and bled from their 7 orifices. Only Hell Kings and Nether King experts with major Grotto-heavens could stabilize themselves and survive after releasing their bloodline phenomenons or condensing their major Grotto-heavens. Many living beings of Hell surged over like a black torrent. However, after being roared by the myriad beings' sound of the martial Tao prime body, the black torrent paused and even showed signs of stopping. The martial Tao prime body threw out the Hell suppression tripod and smashed into the crowd. The 4 sacred souls surged through the black torrent at the same time and started a massacre, galloping unhindered. At the same time, the martial Tao prime body channeled his essence spirit and released dermic arts continuously. Red Lotus Karmic Fire. Suddenly, scarlet flames burst out from the bodies of many living beings of hell and burned their flesh. Ah! Many living beings of hell let out tragic cries. Before the attacks of the martial Dao Prime body could stop, pitch-black flames suddenly spread out from beneath his feet and burned towards the black torrent ahead. Chapter 2666 Martial Dao Will. 2666 Martial Dao Will. The two flames, the Red Lotus Karmic Fire and Hellfire, charged into the black torrent of living beings of hell and released extremely terrifying lethality. Hellfire came from Avicii and contained the pain-true intent of billions of living beings. The living beings of hell were in immense pain and were utterly defeated by the Hellfire. Even Hell Kings and Nether King experts who had condensed major Grotto-heavens were struggling to hold on. What surprised the martial Dao Prime body was that the one who truly caused immense damage to the living beings of hell was not the Hellfire, but the Red Lotus Karmic Fire. The Red Lotus Karmic Fire burned negative karma and could even refine divine powers. In the minor and medium kiliacosms, it could unleash terrifying might. And now, after the Red Lotus Karmic Fire was released in Frost Springs Hell, it sensed the surrounding nether chi and the flames intensified, increasing its might. Hundreds of thousands of Hell King experts were burned to ashes by the Red Lotus Karmic Fire and their essence spirits and bodies were destroyed. The feeling was as though spirit chi in heaven and earth essence chi were not enough to unleash the true power of the Red Lotus Karmic Fire. Only nether chi could unleash the might of the Red Lotus Karmic Fire to its limits. Could the origin of the Red Lotus Karmic Fire have originated from the Hell world? A question flashed through the mind of the martial Dao Prime body. However, the battle was in full swing and he had no time to be distracted. Ah! The Nether Kings of the ancient Nether race gradually could not withstand the burning of the Red Lotus Karmic Fire. Nether King experts who condensed major Grotto-heavens could forcibly hold on. However, Red Lotus Karmic Fire surged out of the bodies of some Nether Kings with minor Grotto-heavens. Even their bloodlines could not suppress it. Not only that, when they released their bloodline phenomenons, the Red Lotus Karmic Fire in their bodies burned even more ferociously. The martial Dao Prime body channeled his bloodline and emitted a scorching heat, charging into the crowd like a gigantic furnace that was burning red. Bang! 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 Under the burning of the Red Lotus Karmic Fire and Hellfire, the living beings of hell in the square were either dead or severely injured. In this situation, no one could stop the footsteps of the martial Dao Prime body. Boom! The martial Dao Prime body punched over and exploded the bodies of a few Hell King experts. He pushed forward with an unstoppable might. Tens of thousands of Hell King experts and the Nether Kings of the ancient Nether race were defeated by the impact of the martial Dao Prime body. They wailed and blood flowed like rivers. Bang! Boom! Not far away, the sound of thunderous iron hooves sounded as a large black cloud surged over. Banners swayed and cold armor shone. Countless troops from the Hell Army were charging over. Tang Kong and Tang Qinger had long hidden outside the battlefield. When they saw this scene from afar, they were shocked. Is he going to go against the entire Frost Springs Hell alone? Tang Qinger asked in disbelief. Tang Kong gulped and tried his best to suppress the shock in his heart as he said slowly, "He's not going against, he might be suppressing Frost Springs Hell." Tang Qinger shuddered and murmured, "Is that possible?" Frost Springs Hell was one of the 9 hells after all. There were countless living beings in hell. Could an outsider suppress them all? Nothing's impossible. Tang Kong said, "The only way to reach the top in Frost Springs Hell is by matching their bloodthirst and violence with equivalent bloodthirst and violence." Even living beings of hell and experts of the ancient Nether race had to use extraordinary methods to rise in Frost Springs Hell. They had to bleed and step on endless corpses. Furthermore, the martial Dao Prime body came from the medium kiliacosm. The living beings of hell were born with hatred towards the people of the medium kiliacosm. To make these living beings of hell submit, the only way was through a baptism of blood and killing. There was another treasure on the martial Dao Prime body, the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. The lethality of the Netherworld Treasure Mirror was extremely terrifying. However, the treasure itself exuded an evil aura. It had been used once in the North Ridge and the martial Dao Prime body was wary of it as well. Unless he had no choice, he did not intend to summon the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. Against the charging Hell Army, the martial Dao Prime body was fearless. He channeled his essence spirit and narrowed the range of the Hellfire and Red Lotus karmic fire, forming a restricted zone barrier around him. Any living being of hell who stepped into this forbidden zone would suffer the burning of the two flames. The martial Tao Prime Body realized that he might face a long battle. The living beings of hell in Frost Springs Hell would definitely not submit easily. The army formed by billions of living beings of hell attacked the forbidden zone of flames ahead again and again, leaving behind countless corpses and ashes. The martial Tao Prime Body wielded the Hell Suppression Tripod and was surrounded by 4 sacred souls. He went on a killing spree and was invincible. Kill, kill, kill. The chants of murder and bugles sounded from the Hell Army. He's only one person. If we attack and kill continuously, we can exhaust him to death if we have to. How can outsiders take over Frost Springs Hell? The will of hell cannot be bullied. Many living beings of hell roared. The battle started from the Consort Inauguration ceremony in the morning and lasted until evening. Although the attacks of the Hell Army were a little weak, they did not stop. If the martial Tao Prime Body was from Frost Springs Hell, the living beings of hell might have submitted long ago. However, the martial Tao Prime Body was not from hell. That was completely unacceptable to the living beings of hell. The flames of war spread continuously and the entire Frost Springs Emperor Palace was enveloped in flames. Thick smoke billowed and blood chi surged as corpses littered the ground. The martial Tao Prime Body turned the Frost Springs Emperor Palace into a blazing purgatory. This battle lasted for an entire day and night. Neither side retreated. Tang Kong and Qing'er stood outside the Emperor Palace and watched the tragic battle without leaving. Up till this point of the battle, it was no longer a simple battle of strength. This was a battle of wills. The martial Tao Prime Body was resisting the will of the billions of living beings in Frost Springs Hell. Although the attacks of the Hell Army had yet to stop, the seeds of fear had already been planted in the hearts of many living beings of hell. The figure fighting in the flames ahead was like an indefatigable god of war who killed in all directions and stood tall. Every living being of hell felt a sense of helplessness. That person seemed to be an existence that could not be defended against or defeated. Even after the billions of living beings of hell condensed their will, they could not shake that figure. In reality, on the side of the martial Tao Prime Body, be it stamina, blood chi or essence spirit, they had already reached their limits. If not for the fact that he used the heaven and earth furnace to smelt dharmic arts all year round, temper his body and condense a perfected true martial Tao body, he would definitely not have been able to last until now. Both parties had already reached their limits. Any external force could change the entire situation. After fighting for a day and night, although the stamina of the martial Tao Prime Body had reached his limits, his will was still unshakable. Although he seemed to be alone, he had once established the martial Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. The martial Tao civilization he represented contained the faith and will of countless people of the martial Tao and the hopes of countless ordinary living beings. Those faith, will and hope were indelible and eternal. Chapter 2667-2667 Supreme Notoriety. 2667 Supreme Notoriety. In the battle that lasted for a day and night, the martial Tao Prime Body sorted out his own dharmic Tao while fighting. Looking at the large forbidden zone formed by the Red Lotus karmic fire and hellfire, he could not help but recall the scene of the Builder Tree showing its might when it woke up. The Builder Tree released a green halo that enveloped everything within a radius of 50 kilometers. Under the envelopment of the green halo, all cultivators including Immortal King experts, were greatly restricted and could not even break through the void to escape. Within the range of the green halo, the Builder Tree was the only god. The green halo released by the Builder Tree was similar to the forbidden zone barrier formed by the two great flames of the martial Tao Prime Body. The future of the martial Tao became clearer and gradually took shape in the Prime Body's mind. What the martial Tao Prime Body wanted to do was to end this battle and cultivate in seclusion. He wanted to sort out his dharmic Tao and take the final step. Up till this point of the battle, both parties had reached their limits. The martial Tao Prime Body took a deep breath of air and looked at the many living beings of hell who were still charging ahead. He channeled his essence spirit and conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands. A gigantic door surrounded by black chi appeared behind him. The door was like a dark abyss, like an ancient behemoth that could devour everything with its bloody mouth. After the martial Tao Prime Body controlled the Hell Suppression Tripod, he once used a supreme dharmic Tao to create a Hell's Gate. Back when the martial Tao Prime body underwent tribulation transcendence, he had yet to completely control the secret skill. It merely contained a trace of Grotto-heaven power. The Hell's Gate that was condensed was only in the form of a Grotto-heaven and did not have the will of a Grotto-heaven. Even so, he could defend against the 10th heavenly tribulation with the help of that Hell's Gate. But now, the martial Tao Prime body had complete control over the power of the Grotto-heaven. The Hell's Gate evolved once more and advanced another level, transforming into the Avicii Gate. The door shrouded in black chi before him was identical to the door of greater Avicii. In fact, endless Avicii chi surged from it, filled with the pain-true intent of billions of living beings as it swept towards the massive Hell army ahead. The martial Tao Prime body erected the Avicii Gate in front of him to stop the Hell army. The endless troops in the Hell army were devoured by the Avicii Gate and vanished completely, suppressed. Together with the Avicii Gate, the forbidden zone of flames caused the greatest amount of damage to the endless Hell army. In the fiery region ahead, the endless abyss surrounded by black chi was like an insurmountable barrier that would kill anyone who crossed it. The battle lasted for a day and night, and the spirit of the army of Hell living beings had already reached their limits. The descent of the Avicii Gate became the last straw that crushed the many living beings of Hell. The living beings of Hell were ferocious and bloodthirsty. They did not mind dying. However, even though they knew that they would definitely die and could not see any hope of survival, the living beings of Hell could feel terror and fear. Too many living beings of Hell in Frost Springs Hell died in this battle. Corpses piled around the main hall of the Emperor Palace, forming continuous mountain ranges with endless blood flowing at the foot of the corpse mountains. Those were only corpses visible to the naked eye. There were also countless living beings of Hell who were burned to death by the two flames of the martial Tao Prime body. The later generations of the Hell world calculated that more than 20,000 Hell King experts in Frost Springs Hell died in this battle alone. Including other living beings of Hell, a conservative estimate would place that figure more than 100 million. The Frost Springs Emperor Palace had already turned into a fiery hell with flames of war burning everywhere. Even from outside the Emperor Palace, one could see the blood-colored mountain peaks piled up with corpses. It was a shocking sight. This battle severely injured Frost Springs Hell and it became dormant for many years. The martial Tao Prime body single-handedly massacred the king experts of Frost Springs Hell into keeping silent out of fear. Countless living beings of Hell bowed down to him, establishing his supreme notoriety. Even if all the living beings of Hell who participated in the battle were lucky enough to survive, their hearts were still shrouded in a terrifying shadow. In fact, Desolate Marshall's name had already become a taboo in Frost Springs Hell. The living beings of Hell did not even dare to mention it. The battle ended. Countless living beings of Hell fled Frost Springs City, and the remaining living beings of Hell knelt on the ground one after another, bowing down and not daring to resist. Frost Springs Hell had changed owners. Countless living beings of Hell raised their heads and looked at the figure in the flames of war. His purple robe was soaked in blood and his cold silver mask made them feel endless fear. Even against the former Hell Lord Frost Springs, many living beings of Hell did not feel this way. Tang Kong and Tang Chinger stood outside the Emperor Palace and witnessed the entire battle. Even now they felt that it was unreal. Desolate Marshall won? He suppressed countless living beings of Hell and trampled the entire Frost Springs Hell beneath his feet. Tang Kong let out a long breath with a conflicted expression, his eyes filled with both joy and worry. On the one hand, after the martial Tao Prime body had taken over Frost Springs Hell and became the new Hell Lord Frost Springs, they would not have to flee everywhere in the future. On the other hand, Frost Springs Hell would fall into a long period of chaos. Frost Springs Hell was way too big. The East Plains, South Forest, West Swamp, North Ridge and even the Central Capital included, there would definitely be some experts and factions who would stand out to fight the martial Tao Prime body. Of course, given the methods displayed by the martial Tao Prime body, these experts and factions were nothing to fear. The greatest threat for the martial Tao Prime body was still the other 8 hells. Before long, the battle today would spread to the other 8 hells. Although the Hell world was once severely injured and fell into the Dharma ending era without the rule of the Lord of Hell, the 9 hells were independent. The 8 hells might not even care if Frost Springs Hell changed owners. However, the martial Tao Prime body was an outsider after all. The 8 hells might probably not allow a Hell Lord from the medium Kiliacosm to take reign. Once the 8 hells joined forces, they would be much stronger than the Frost Springs hell before them and would not submit and retreat easily. Tang Kong brought Tang Qing'er back to the Emperor Palace. This time round, the way Tang Qing'er looked at the martial Dao Prime body had changed completely. Prior to this, although the martial Dao Prime body had once displayed his might in the North Ridge, killing many Nether kings and suppressing the living beings of hell in the North Ridge, Tang Qing'er was not too afraid of him. After this battle, Tang Qing'er did not even dare to meet the eyes of the martial Dao Prime body. "You're here. Just in time." When the martial Dao Prime body saw Tang Kong return, he nodded slightly. "I'll leave the maintenance of the Frost Springs Emperor Palace and Frost Springs City, including the living beings of hell in the city, to you from now on." Ha! Tang Kong was stunned. With his ability, it was not too difficult for him to deal with these things. However, he was only King Northridge after all. It was difficult for him to convince the masses if he wanted to lead the living beings of hell in Frost Springs City. As though he could read Tang Kong's concerns, the martial Dao Prime body said casually, "From now on, you'll take on the position of Hell Lord Frost Springs." However, she had not expected the two of them to reunite in Frost Springs Hell today. Furthermore, this person had already grown to this point and suppressed the entire Frost Springs Hell single-handedly. The two of them were silent for a long time. The martial Dao Prime body was the first to speak. "In Tianhuang mainland, I once saw you undergo tribulation transcendence and ascend with my own eyes. Why are you here?" So, he was still paying attention to me in Tianhuang mainland? A thought flashed through Consort Yu's mind. She shook her head gently. "At that time, I indeed underwent tribulation transcendence and ascended. However, during the process of ascending, I was struck by the turbulence of the starry skies and died on the spot." "You died?" The martial Dao Prime body frowned slightly and asked, "You're already dead?" "Of course." Consort Yu smiled bitterly. "If I didn't already die, why would I come to the Hell world and transform into the ancient Nether race in Frost Springs Hell?" The martial Dao Prime body was even more confused when he heard that. As though she could tell the confusion in the martial Dao Prime body's heart, Consort Yu explained, "Generally speaking, when all living beings die, their souls will enter the Netherworld. In the Netherworld, after being baptized by the water of the Yellow Springs, one will lose the memories of their previous life. Then, under the guidance of the living beings of the Netherworld, the souls of all living beings will be sent to the 6 paths. The Hell world is one of the 6 paths." When he heard that, the martial Dao Prime body's heart skipped a beat. Consort Yu's few sentences revealed too much information. Furthermore, the information was shocking enough. The 6 paths of the 6 paths of reincarnation were the Heavenly Dao, Human Dao, Azura Dao, Beast Dao, Hungry Ghost Dao and Hell Dao. As for the so-called Hell Dao, it was actually a vast world that could coexist with the medium Kiliacosm. If the Hell Dao was represented by a world, did that mean that the other 5 were the same? Perhaps that was the deeper meaning of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Consort Yu's words confirmed a previous guess of the martial Dao Prime body. Hell and the Netherworld were 2 completely different places but were inextricably linked. The martial Dao Prime body asked, "Your soul was sent to the Hell world. That's why you were reborn in Frost Springs Hell?" Consort Yu nodded. The ancient Nether race of the 9 hells are actually the souls of all living beings in the Trichiliacosm. Through the Netherworld, they were sent to the Hell world of the 6 paths and obtained different powers from the 9 springs of Hell, transformed from the spring water. To be precise, this isn't considered a rebirth. That's because these souls no longer have the memories of their previous lives and have completely gotten rid of all the imprints of their previous lives. They are born as a completely new life in the 9 springs of Hell, the ancient Nether race. The martial Dao Prime body discovered the loophole and asked, "In that case, why do you still have the memories of your previous life when you transformed in Frost Springs Hell?" Consort Yu said, "That's because I once unintentionally obtained a magical flower called the Permitha flower. There's nothing special about this flower in Tianhuang mainland. When my soul fell into the Netherworld, I carried the Permitha flower. The protection of that flower helped me preserve the memories of my previous life. Later on, I was transformed in the Frost Springs. Although I changed into this body and possessed the bloodline of the ancient Nether race, I still retain the memories of my previous life." The martial Dao Prime body nodded to himself. As long as she retained the memories of her previous life from a certain perspective, Consort Yu was not truly dead. Or rather, this was just her rebirth. Consort Yu took out a bright red flower from her consciousness and said in confusion, "I've seen this Permetha flower on both sides of the Netherworld's Yellow Springs Road. I heard that the Permetha flower only grows on both sides of the Yellow Springs Road. As such, I wonder why there was one of these in Tianhuang mainland." Chapter 2669 Nine Springs Hell Sutra. 2669 Nine Springs Hell Sutra. Consort Yu's words resolved many questions in the heart of the martial Tao Prime body and unveiled a corner of the mysterious veil of the Hell world at the same time. The so-called transformation was not them being born out of thin air. Instead, it was a life form evolved from the souls of all living beings that entered the Hell world after they died and borrowed the power of the Nine Springs of Hell. Although the ancient Nether race in the Hell world could not reproduce, as long as living beings died and entered the Netherworld and Hell, there would be an endless stream of ancient Nether race beings born. The martial Tao Prime body pondered for a moment and asked, since the souls of the Netherworld can pass through the six paths and enter the Hell world, can the living beings of the Hell world head to the Netherworld? No. Consort Yu shook her head. Up till now, I've never heard of a path that can connect to the other worlds from the Hell world. The Netherworld and Hell world are two independent worlds. To be precise, the minor kiliacosms, medium kiliacosms, Netherworld and six paths are independent. However, there's a certain connection between them. The martial Tao Prime body nodded to himself. When living beings of minor kiliacosms cultivated to a certain realm, they could ascend to a medium kiliacosm of a higher level. As for the living beings of the minor and medium kiliacosms, after they died, their souls could enter the Netherworld. In the Netherworld, souls could enter the Hell world or the other five paths through the six paths of reincarnation. The martial Tao Prime body asked, if living beings in the minor and medium kiliacosms die and their souls enter the Netherworld, they will enter the six paths of reincarnation. Can we follow this lead and find the whereabouts of these souls? The reason why the martial Tao Prime body asked that was because he thought of his eldest brother, Su Hong and Ji Yaoshua. That's impossible. Consort Yu shook her head. Think about it. There are billions of minor kiliacosms and 3,000 medium kiliacosms. There are countless living beings and countless souls returning to the Netherworld at every moment. How can we find them? Furthermore, after these souls were baptized by the Yellow Springs and lost their memories, they were completely cut off from their previous lives. If they experienced a few more reincarnations, it would be even more impossible to investigate. The martial Tao Prime body was silent. He knew in his heart that Consort Yu was right. At every moment, countless souls would enter the Netherworld. Su Hong had already died for many years. His soul must have long entered the six paths after arriving at the Netherworld and achieved reincarnation with his current whereabouts unknown. As for Ji Yaoshua, up till now the martial Tao Prime body did not know what had happened to her. Ji Yaoshua had once passed away in his arms. However, in the end Ji Yaoshua's corpse vanished into thin air in the coffin. The martial Tao Prime body had once thought that he might be able to find some clues in the Netherworld. From the looks of it, even if he could enter the Netherworld he would probably not be able to find anything. How did you come to the Hell world? Consort Yu had a puzzled expression and asked, from the looks of it, you don't look like you were born from the Nine Springs of Hell. I was pushed down an abyss in a secret ground and arrived here. The martial Tao Prime body described the entire process briefly. At the mention of that he was still puzzled. Who was the old monk guarding the tomb? What did he have to do with the Hell world? What was the old monk's motive for pushing him down? Consort Yu was confused about that as well. It was clear that she had never heard of the old monk guarding the tomb or Avicii. Your cultivation isn't slow. The spirit consciousness of the martial Tao Prime body swept past Consort Yu and he changed the topic. Consort Yu's cultivation was equivalent to a heaven immortal of the heavenly world and was similar to the other old friends of Tianhuang mainland. Consort Yu smiled. I transformed in the Hellfrost Springs and gained the bloodline of the ancient Nether race as well as the cultivation technique of it. In the dark and sinister Hell world, Consort Yu was much happier now that she was with an old friend from Tianhuang mainland. Unknowingly, a smile appeared on her face. In addition, the ancient Nether race can cultivate a taboo mystic classic, the Nine Springs Hell Sutra. Consort Yu added. Taboo mystic classic. the expression of the martial Tao prime body changed. Only cultivation techniques cultivated, created, perfected and passed down by great emperors could be called taboo mystic classic. How could a taboo mystic classic be cultivated casually by ancient nether race beings? When Consort Yu saw the strange expression on the martial Tao prime body's face, she said, "To be precise, it's only one section of the 9 Springs Hell Sutra, the Frost Springs section. Although it's only a single section and is not at the level of a taboo mystic classic, it can still be considered the best cultivation technique." The martial Tao prime body asked, "In that case, the 9 Springs Hell Sutra should have 9 sections corresponding to the 9 springs of hell?" Consort Yu nodded. Every section is beside their respective hell spring water. The ancient nether race of Frost Springs Hell can only cultivate the Frost Springs section. If they cultivate the other sections at the same time, there will be a huge problem. At best, their cultivation will dissipate. At worst, they might even die. I heard that before the Dharma ending era, apart from the Lord of Hell, there were also some living beings of Hell who could cultivate many sections. However, ever since the Lord of Hell died, no one has been able to cultivate multiple sections. The martial Tao prime body asked, "Why?" Consort Yu replied, "It said that apart from the 9 sections, there's also the most important general section that combines and condenses the 9 sections. Only by mastering this general section can one cultivate the complete taboo mystic classic." This general section was engraved on an ancient mirror that the Lord of Hell carried with him. Ever since he died, the ancient mirror was lost as well. As time passed, this general section was gradually lost. When he heard that, the martial Tao prime body's heart skipped a beat. He took out the netherworld treasure mirror and handed it to Consort Yu. "This is..." Consort Yu probed. The martial Tao prime body said, "An ancient mirror I picked up in Avicii. It's rather evil and might be the ancient mirror of the Lord of Hell back then. However, the general section you mentioned is not on this ancient mirror." The martial Tao prime body turned the ancient mirror to the back. There are only 3 words on the back of the ancient mirror: Netherworld Treasure Mirror. Nothing else apart from that. Just as the martial Tao prime body flipped the Netherworld Treasure Mirror around, his palm brushed past the edge of the ancient mirror and he felt a pain in his palm. It was bleeding. The gaze of the martial Tao prime body froze. How strong was his physique? When the true martial Tao body was cultivated to perfection, even ordinary Grotto-heaven spirit treasures could not injure him at all. Right now, the edge of the ancient mirror had inadvertently injured his palm. That was not all. Just as the martial Tao prime body was about to place the ancient mirror aside to check on the wound, a powerful devouring power burst forth from the edge of the ancient mirror. The netherworld treasure mirror seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty weapon as it gulped down the bloodline of the martial Tao prime body along the wound like it was thirsty. The eyes of the martial Tao prime body flashed coldly and he flung it, wanting to throw the netherworld treasure mirror down. However, it was as though the netherworld treasure mirror had already grown in his wound. The edge of the ancient mirror was embedded into the wound and even went deeper. The martial Tao prime body could clearly sense that his bloodline was being plundered crazily by the netherworld treasure mirror at an astonishing speed. If he could not stop this process, he would probably be sucked into a dried corpse in a dozen breaths. Chapter 2670 2672 Mystic Classics. 2672 Mystic Classics. The martial Tao prime body summoned the hell suppression tripod and smashed it towards the netherworld treasure mirror. Clang. There was a loud bang. The hell suppression tripod collided with the netherworld treasure mirror and a sanguine light appeared on the mirror of the netherworld treasure mirror, emitting an extremely evil and filthy power. Instantly, the hell suppression tripod bounced off and enveloped the martial Tao prime body. The martial Tao prime body's heart skipped a beat. The evil and filthy power was extremely powerful and even the perfected true martial Tao body could not withstand it. The Dharmic Tao runes contained in his bones and body showed signs of dissipating. To think that the martial Tao prime body would be dragged into danger by the evil ancient mirror before he could encounter any powerful opponents in Frost Springs Hell. The martial Tao prime body did not have time to think. He summoned his soul lantern and released the martial spirit fire, igniting it. The soul lantern burned and was filled with a golden halo, dispelling the evil and filthy power in the surroundings. The martial Tao prime body wielded the soul lantern and placed it beneath the netherworld treasure mirror, burning it with the flames of the soul lantern. Ah! A tragic cry sounded from the netherworld treasure mirror. Immediately after, the netherworld treasure mirror shuddered and fell from the wound on the palm of the martial Tao prime body, becoming silent once more. The martial Tao prime body heaved a sigh of relief. There was a high chance that the reaction of the netherworld treasure mirror was caused by the weapon spirit. The awakening of this weapon spirit should have been triggered by the endless Grotto-heaven powers absorbed during the battle in the North Ridge. After the weapon spirit awakened, it made use of the netherworld treasure mirror to devour essence blood crazily. Earlier on, the weapon spirit even harbored designs on the martial Tao prime body. The soul lantern possessed an extremely terrifying lethality towards spirit bodies and souls. Therefore, although the martial Tao prime body could not injure the netherworld treasure mirror after summoning the soul lantern, it caused immense damage to the weapon spirit. The martial Tao prime body roasted the netherworld treasure mirror with the soul lantern for a while more. The netherworld treasure mirror was silent and did not react anymore. It was as though the weapon spirit had already been destroyed by the soul lantern. The martial Tao prime body extinguished the soul lantern and put it away before picking up the netherworld treasure mirror again. This time round, a strange feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. It was as though he had already established a faint connection with the netherworld treasure mirror. The martial Tao prime body speculated that the appearance of this feeling might be related to the netherworld treasure mirror devouring his bloodline earlier on. He tried to activate it a few more times but there was no reaction from the netherworld treasure mirror. Up till now he still did not know what use the ancient mirror had and how to activate it. However, this time round, when his spirit consciousness surged into the netherworld treasure mirror, he seemed to have sensed something. With a thought, dense strange runes appeared slowly on the mirror of the netherworld treasure mirror. There are words. Consort Yu looked at the strange runes on the netherworld treasure mirror and exclaimed softly, "It's the Nether language." The martial Tao prime body took a look. The strange runes on the netherworld treasure mirror clearly came from the same source as the words in the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra that the Green Lotus True Body had shown him. This is the Nether language? The martial Tao prime body asked. Consort Yu nodded and paused for a moment before shaking her head. I don't know the details either. However, the living beings of hell call them Nether language. The Nine Springs Hell Sutra is written in such words. The martial Tao prime body asked again, can you understand the Nether language? Yes. Consort Yu nodded. She had transformed in the Hell Frost Springs and stayed in Frost Springs Hell for thousands of years, so she was already proficient in such strange runes. Consort Yu looked at the strange runes on the netherworld treasure mirror and said excitedly, this is the general section of the Nine Springs Hell Sutra. Put it away quickly and don't show it to anyone. The martial Tao prime body said casually, it's fine. Take a look as you please. Consort Yu's heart skipped a beat as she glanced at the martial Tao prime body quickly before retracting her gaze. The general section could sort out the 9 sections of the Hell Sutra and contain the core dharmic Tao of that secret manual. It's no small deal. Back then, only the Lord of Hell was in control of the general section. If the other Hell Lords made great contributions, they could obtain a reward from the Lord of Hell and he would impart a few sentences from the general section to them. Even so, it was enough for those Hell Lords to benefit endlessly. But now, the person before her did not hide anything and allowed her to read the secret skill sutra as she pleased. Consort Yu's heart could not help but stir. Right then, the martial Tao prime body continued, after you're done reading, you can explain to me the meaning of the Nether language. So that's his intention. Consort Yu thought to herself with a look of disappointment. She abandoned those distracting thoughts and gathered her attention before long to read the general section of the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. As she read it herself, she explained the Nether language on the Netherworld Treasure Mirror to the martial Tao prime body word by word. It took Consort Yu an entire night to finish annotating the general section. This night was a huge drain on her spirit as well. The dharmic Tao contained in the general section was indeed incomparably profound. If she wanted to comprehend the essence of it, she would need some time to figure it out. Of course, this general section allowed her future cultivation path to suddenly become incomparably broad and bright. If she had the chance in the future to obtain the other 8 sections of the Hell Sutra, it would be equivalent to her obtaining the complete 9 Springs Hell Sutra. The cultivation realm of the martial Tao prime body was even higher. He had read many high-grade cultivation techniques and even a few taboo mystic classics. Given his judgment and talent, he naturally benefited even more overnight. Initially, he had doubts about whether the Nine Springs Hell Sutra was a taboo mystic classic. However, after reading the general section, he was almost certain that the Nine Springs Hell Sutra was a taboo mystic classic. The Dharmic Tao contained in the sutra was exquisite and only taboo mystic classics could reach that level. In that case, the Lord of Hell of the past should have cultivated to the level of a great emperor. Of course, the martial Tao Prime Body did not only obtain the general sutra of a taboo mystic classic overnight. Through Consort Yu's explanation, he understood a lot more about the Nether language. There were only 600-odd words in the 2 sections of the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra. Right now, the martial Tao Prime Body could already read the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra on his own. The martial Tao Prime Body merely browsed through it briefly and felt that the 600-odd words in the Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra were even more profound. Every single word and sentence seemed to contain some maxim of the great Tao. If one pondered for a moment, they would be able to comprehend other Dharmic Taos with endless profundities. The Yin-Yang Talisman Sutra seemed to be of a higher level than the Nine Springs Hell Sutra. At the very least, it was a taboo mystic classic as well. Right? As though she had recalled something, Consort Yu said with a grim expression, "If word gets out about today's battle, the experts of the other 8 hells won't sit idly by." Yes. The thoughts of the martial Tao Prime Body were focused on the 2 cultivation technique sutras as he replied distractedly. "In fact, I suspect that the 8 hells will join forces to deal with you." Afraid that the martial Tao Prime Body did not know the pros and cons, Consort Yu continued, "Didn't you see Tang Kong's bitter expression when you made him Hell Lord Frost Springs? He must have realized the consequences of this matter as well. You can't be careless." Chapter 2671 Hell Frost Springs. 2671 Hell Frost Springs. The martial Tao Prime Body pondered in silence. If the 8 hells joined forces, it would indeed be quite troublesome. Previously, when he killed Hell Lord Frost Springs, he caught the latter off guard and made use of the Hell Suppression Tripod. If the combat strength of the 8 Hell Lords was comparable to Hell Lord Frost Springs, once they joined forces, it would be difficult for him to defend even if he summoned the Hell Suppression Tripod. The Netherworld Treasure Mirror was too evil and he did not know how to activate it. The Soul Lantern was extremely harmful to the essence, spirit and soul. However, it was difficult for the Soul Lantern to cause direct damage to the various Hell Lords who possessed actual bodies and bloodlines. Furthermore, there was an invisible danger hidden in his essence martial Grotto-heaven. Every time he released the essence martial Grotto-heaven, his spirit perception would warn him. If this danger could not be resolved, he had to be careful in the future battles and could not casually summon the essence martial Grotto-heaven. Fortunately, there were no Emperor Realm experts in the Hell world under the envelopment of the Dharma ending era. If he could take the most critical step in his martial Tao, he would not be afraid even if the 8 Hell Lords joined forces. The martial Tao Prime Body asked, "Is there a place here where I can enter seclusion?" Right now, the most important thing for him was to make the best use of his time and cultivate in seclusion. He had to absorb and digest the 2 sutras he had just obtained and perfect the next step of the martial Tao. After all, the 8 hells had been independent for many years. It was not easy for all that power to join forces within a short period of time. This was an opportunity for the martial Tao Prime Body. Consort Yu said, "Beside the Hell Frost Springs, there are a few secret chambers where the Hell Lord used to cultivate. There are array formations and restrictions engraved outside that prevent others from approaching. The Nether Chi beside the Frost Springs is also the richest and you can better absorb the power of the Hell Frost Springs." All right. The martial Tao Prime Body nodded. It was a good opportunity for him to experience the legendary 9 springs of hell that possessed strange powers. Consort Yu sped into the depths of the hall with the martial Tao Prime Body. The closer they were to the back of the hall, the colder the temperature became. The surrounding hall was clearly covered in a layer of frost. "By the way, there's one more thing," Consort Yu reminded. "The Frost Springs exudes a bone-chilling coldness and has an obvious suppression on living beings of other bloodlines. It's the most harmful to aquatic living beings." As an ancient Nether race being, Consort Yu was born from the Frost Springs and was resistant to the Hell Frost Springs. However, other living beings of hell could not approach at all. The martial Tao Prime Body remained silent. As the 2 of them went deeper and the temperature decreased, Consort Yu was fine. However, she was surprised to discover that the martial Tao prime body could move freely as well, as though he was not affected at all. On the contrary, when she stood beside the martial Tao prime body, she could still sense that there was a gigantic walking furnace beside her that was warm and extremely comfortable. Even ancient Nether race beings from the other hells had to release Grotto-heavens to defend against the chill. The two of them passed through a long passageway, and before long, their vision cleared up. What entered their vision was a gigantic lake that was filled with mist and transformed into various living beings in midair. At the center of the lake, a water stream the size of a well could be seen surging continuously. Brook, brook. The spring water flowed towards the surroundings, creating ripples that formed the gigantic Frost Springs lake. If he was not wrong, the surging water in the middle of the lake should be the eye of the Hell Frost Springs. The martial Tao prime body swept his gaze and realized that he could vaguely see traces of the mud beneath his feet being submerged by the Frost Springs previously. Consort Yu explained, "I heard that before the Dharma ending era of Hell, the water flowing in the Frost Springs was much larger than what we saw before. The lake formed was also several times larger than the one before us and could drown more than half of this main hall. Later on, the world shattered, the Great Tao was damaged and the laws were incomplete. As a result, the Frost Springs gradually dried up and the lake shrank, resulting in its current state." The martial Tao prime body looked at the Hell Frost Springs before him in deep thought. The nether chi around the Hell Frost Springs was indeed the densest. In other words, it was not an exaggeration to call it the center of Frost Springs Hell. Its use and status might be even more important than the builder tree to the heavenly world. In the heavenly world, the builder tree could gather heaven and earth essence chi and form a regional continent suitable for all kinds of living beings to cultivate. As for the Hell Frost Springs before him, it could be said to be the source of the nether chi in Frost Springs Hell. The spring water was different from the builder tree. The builder tree grew in the central area of the heavenly world and was motionless. As for the spring water, it flowed continuously and traced its source. There had to be a spring on the other side of the Frost Springs. The eye of the Hell Frost Springs was right in front of the martial Tao prime body. In that case, where was the source of the spring? The martial Tao prime body was curious as to what kind of spring source could evolve into such dense nether chi. The powerful power even nourished the spring water of the entire Frost Springs Hell. The martial Tao prime body stepped forward and arrived at the side of the Frost Springs lake. The temperature by the lake was even lower. Even with the terrifying blood chi of the martial Tao prime body, he could feel a needle-like chilliness on his body. His eyebrows and long hair were covered in a layer of frost. He looked towards the Frost Springs lake and narrowed his eyes slightly. Through the layers of coldness, one could vaguely see balls of light of various shapes floating in the lake, nurturing different living beings. There were humans, demons, giants and dragons. At a glance, there were countless living beings of the 10,000 races. Those balls of light were like fetal membranes. The living beings in the fetal membranes were souls that had entered the Hell Tao. The souls soaked in the water of the Frost Springs and absorbed the power of the Hell Frost Springs continuously, using that power to gradually derive flesh and blood to obtain new life. The souls that had just entered the Frost Springs lake sank to the bottom of the lake. As time passed, these souls absorbed enough power and regained their bodies. When they were about to wake up, they would float up. That scene looked a little strange and hair-raising. There were also some guards guarding the Frost Springs lake. The guards already knew the outcome of the battle outside and looked at the martial Tao prime body with fear. Consort Yu explained, "These are the escort guards of the ancient Nether race who guard this place. For the transformed ancient Nether race, guards will guide them and impart the Tao to awaken their bloodlines before letting them head over to cultivate the Frost Springs section." Following Consort Yu's gaze, the martial Tao prime body saw a tall stele standing beside the Frost Springs lake. There were dense words engraved on it, all of them strange runes. The martial Tao prime body approached and read the Frost Springs section from top to bottom. He first read the general section of the 9 Springs Hell Sutra before reading the Frost Springs section. It was much smoother and some obscure points became easy to understand. The martial Tao prime body memorized the Frost Springs section again before arriving at a secret cultivation chamber at the side under Consort Yu's guidance. Although it was called a secret chamber, it was actually rather spacious and was equivalent to a rather large cave abode. There were many miscellaneous items inside. The martial Dao Prime Body gave Consort Yu a few more instructions before entering seclusion in the secret chamber to cultivate. This seclusion was extremely important. It would be a leap of a major realm that determined the upper limit of the martial Dao in the future. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.